really, he's so nice. People say, is he smart? I said, you have no idea. He's actually, he's really nice because he's smart. He knows it's the only way you can live with it. Where is Mike? Mike, it's the only way you can do it. He's the nicest guy. But in actuality, he's not a nice person. He's ruthless. You haven't seen this guy when he gets angry. I don't want it. I'll ruin your image overnight. He is a phenomenal guy, a great speaker, Mike Johnson. Thank you very much. I don't know. Is that good or bad for you? I'm not so sure. It's okay. He said, whatever the heck you want to say is okay. First female Republican Attorney General of Iowa and an early supporter of Trump. And where's Brenna Bird? Brenna, thank you very much. She's so popular in Iowa. She came out so early, and I appreciate it very much. That's great. Alaska Lieutenant Governor Nancy Dahlstrom. Nancy, thank you, Nancy. Thank you very much. You have a great governor too, by the way, Nancy. He's also tall. He's seriously tall. I mean, the guy's like 7'2". He is a tall guy, but he's a great governor. I have a son who's tall like him. And Barron is very tall. They're all tall, but Barron's seriously tall, right? So anyway, say hello to him. He's a great governor. South Carolina Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evett. Where is Pamela? Thank you very much. Good job you're doing. Great job. Good. And good luck with everything. I know it's big stuff, right? Oh, good. Thank you. Well, you have a great governor. Oklahoma Agricultural Commissioner Blaine Arthur. Blaine, thank you, Blaine. Good. Nice to see you. And so many other incredible women. I'm going to make so many enemies because I'm looking here. I know every one of them, and I'm supposed to say their names. Maybe we'll get to it. I don't know. It's a long list. For 4 long years, we had an administration that tried to abolish the very concept of womanhood and replace it with radical gender ideology. Maybe you heard something about that. They destroyed women's spaces and even tried to replace the word mother with the term birther person. A mother became a birther person. What's that all about? Then you wonder why they lost. They're trying to figure out why did they lose. I saw a congressman today for the Democrats. He was having a big fight on television early this morning, trying to make it so that really he thinks men should play in women's sports. He hasn't given that up yet. He was fighting like crazy. I said, this guy is going to lose. He's going to lose badly. The whole party is still into that. They haven't learned and we don't want them to learn, frankly. We want them to keep fighting. Let's not tell them. Under the Trump administration, we're ending the Marxist war on women, and you had a war on women, and we're protecting women's rights, defending women's dignity, and standing up for the American moms and daughters. So many are represented here, great people in this room. American women have never had bigger champions than all of us in the White House. I mean, it's me, but it's the group of men and women. We have a lot of men that are like Howard, our head of commerce, I see is here. What are you doing here, Howard? Oh, that's a good, he's got his beautiful wife here. I was saying, what's Howard doing here? It's like, there aren't too many men in this audience, actually. But he's a big advocate, and we're going to be making right after this, we're going to be making a big special announcement, Howard and I and Scott and a few other people on cars. We have Liberation Day in America. That's where we take back all of this money that's been ripped off from us for so many decades. And we start a process. We're going to go with the tariffs and cars. And as you've probably been reading, it's all over the place. You've been reading and seeing and watching car companies and every other form of company. They're pouring back into our country at levels never seen before. We're up to, I guess, close, Howard, to $5 trillion of investments already. And there's never been that much for a year. We did that in a period of 6 weeks. There's never been any numbers like that. We've never seen. They're all coming. They're all coming in so they don't have to pay tariffs. It's very simple, because if you build your product in the USA, there is no tariff. On day one, I made the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. So, is there anybody, seriously, is there anybody that disagrees with that in this room? I was thinking maybe somebody from the press might raise their hand. I don't think so. There aren't too many people. You know, it's amazing. It's got to be like a 98% issue, right? So what are they doing, Marjorie? What are they doing? They're fighting for a 2% issue. That's good. Let them keep doing it. No matter how many surgeries you have or chemicals you inject, if you're born with male DNA in every cell of your body, you can never become a woman. You're not going to be a woman. And that's why last month I proudly signed a historic executive order to ban men from competing in women's sports. And it was very popular, very popular. We had a track meet, and it was so disparaging to great women athletes. I've known so many great women athletes. I gave Annika Sorenstam the Medal of Freedom here not so long ago, and these are unbelievable athletes, but it's so ridiculous. They had a track meet, and you heard me talking about long distance track meet. The man won by 5 hours and 14 minutes and 12 seconds. And I said, this is not good. And you want to see worse? Take a look at the weightlifting records. Take a look at the boxing. Take a look at this. The whole thing is ridiculous. And frankly, it's demeaning to women. And you are superior to men, in my opinion. What do I know? You are. Huh? I see you. No, they are superior. I've known it all my life, and I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy. I also banned puberty blockers. Can you believe I'm even saying this? And the sexual mutilation of minor youth. Now, who would think, let's go back 10 or 15 years. If you ever heard a statement like that, you'd say, what the hell is he even talking about, right, Brooke? What is he talking about? Puberty blockers. But that's where we are. That's where we've come, and we're ending it. We're sending it back to where it came from, oblivion, right? So in the recent election, we did fantastically well with women. I kept hearing, women don't like them. I said, I think they do. Don't like, fake polls don't like me. That's who don't like me. But we're setting records in so many of these cases. And I was for women. I was for the women, the suburban housewife, where I stopped low-income housing projects from being built at a house next to you, where people were being decimated. The houses were being literally ripped up and destroyed. And I stopped it, and we've stopped it again. We had to stop it again. I stopped it first term. We had a great first term, a really successful first term. We had the largest increase in stock market value, 88% increase in the history of our country. We gave you the biggest tax cuts. We gave you the biggest regulation cuts. We rebuilt our military. We gave too much of it away to Afghanistan, this character. He gave billions and billions of dollars of it away to Afghanistan. And maybe we'll have to ask for that back, although it's getting a little old now. They're getting a little old. We're building new stuff. But I will say that it was such an honor working with so many great women. I've worked with women all my life. I've always been ahead on that subject. I had women in my construction business putting up skyscrapers in New York 30 years ago, 35 years ago, long before it was in vogue. And they were phenomenal. Every one of them was phenomenal. My administration listens to America's moms, and that's why I recently created the Presidential Commission to make America healthy again, and that's really caught on. That's really caught on. And Bobby Kennedy, by the way, is doing a great job. He was. I think it's going to go down as another great choice. And we just don't want to treat the chronic disease crisis. We want to prevent our children from getting sick in the first place. And there are so many things that we are doing wrong. Something happened. If you go back 20 years, autism, think of it, 1 in 20,000 children. Think of that. 1 autism. You see it all over. 1 in 20,000 children. Now it's 1 in 36 children. Now, what the hell is that all about? There's something out there, and we got to find it. But can you imagine 1 in 20,000, and now it's 1 in 36, not 36,000, 1 in 36 children. And I see it all the time. And so there's something out there, and we're going to find it. We're doing something really wrong, and it might be very simple to even correct, but we're looking very hard, and Bobby's looking very hard, and we're going to figure it out. And to further support our nation's mothers, I've signed an executive order to expand access to fertility treatments like IVF. That's Katie. Katie. Where's Katie? Katie called your great senator from Alabama. She called, and she was like in a little bit of angst, right? She said, "Sir, we just had a ruling from an Alabama judge who said you couldn't have the clinics IVF." And I was in my plane, and she said, "It's terrible. It's terrible. Friends of mine are virtually attacking me," and said, because they're not really people don't talk about it necessarily. And why should they? But Katie called me up. She did such a great job. And she said, "Sir, you have to get on this right away. It's terrible. They're going to close up all the clinics." They ordered all the clinics closed. And I said, "So, Katie, give me a quick definition, please. Educate me in a minute or less." And she did. And I came out totally in favor of what all of these women wanted. And it became our issue. We actually took it away, Mike, from the Democrats. They were late to the party, and it was really, I give you a lot of credit. So thank you very much. Thank you, Katie. Great job. And I also signed an executive order to begin abolishing the Department of Education, as we said, but also to go back and do things with our school children that just hasn't been done in many, many years. But the basic is reading, writing, and arithmetic. And we want to make sure that they teach English, okay? But I think we're not going to have a problem. And you're going to see things happen, I think, on the education front like nobody can believe. It's very exciting. Very exciting. And so many of the states like Iowa and Idaho and Indiana, by the way, unrelated, but Indiana, they just signed Honda, one of the biggest auto plants in the world, is going. Honda, big company, would have never come here except for, let's say, the election. I like to say the election result, but let's give tariffs a little. Well, without the election result, you wouldn't have the tariffs, right? So I guess it's all about the election, Marjorie. But one of the biggest anywhere in the world. They're building in Indiana, big plant, and we have many of them going up. Many plants in other countries have stopped. They've stopped construction. One of them right in the middle of construction. They just signed a contract. They're going to build it here instead. So you're going to see that at record. Just remember, I told you so in 12 months from now. But on day one, we're ending the inflation nightmare that Joe Biden created and caused, but just by his spending. Two things: his spending, but I think more important, he destroyed our energy policy. And energy started going up, gasoline, any form of energy went through the roof. And then what he did to get it down a little bit, he went back to the Trump policy. Everything, let him drill, let him. They were very, very concerned. And it was too late because that jackrabbit had gotten out of the nest. And it was too late. They really screwed us up in so many ways. How about allowing millions and millions of people to come into our country? Open borders. People from all over the world, not South America, but all over the world. They came in from Africa, from Asia, from all over the world, from prisons. The prisons were emptied into our country. I call them prisons and jails, prison being a slightly tougher term, but the prisons and jails were emptied into our country. The mental institutions and insane asylum, same thing. Insane asylum is mental institution on steroids, right? And I used to say, Dr. Hannibal Lecter, the great Dr. Hannibal Lecter is in a hotel room near you. And the fake news back there, a lot of fake news here, by the way. Fake news would say, "Why does he keep mentioning Hannibal Lecter?" I said, "You know why? Because we just won an election. We got a lot of votes because of Hannibal Lecter. We don't want to have Hannibal Lecter in our country." So we watched what was happening to destroy our country, and a woman, by the way, the head of Homeland, Christie is doing a great job. Kristi Noem, she's doing a great job. She's getting them out, and Tom Homan and Kristi Noem, they're doing an unbelievable job. She's tough. She might be tougher than Tom. Is that pretty tough, right? I'd say Tom is central casting. But he says, I think she might be tougher than me. So we needed that because she's dealing with a rough group of people. Millions and millions of people. 21 million people came in. But of that, at least 3 million are serious criminals. Many of them are murderers, 11,088. And of that number, about half have murdered more than one person. This is not going to end well. So we're getting them out in record numbers. And we're having a lot of problems with the courts because the courts want to pretend they're president. And they're not president. They didn't get 80 million votes, and they're not. They can't do that to this country. That's not their job, but we're getting them out in record numbers, and it's going to save a lot of lives. We have some really bad people in this country, but you see the ones we're taking out. Trendy Aragua, the toughest of all gangs, MS-13. And we're getting them out. So in just 2 months, core inflation has dropped to its lowest pace in 4 years. We've got it going down. The groceries I told you about, and energy of all kinds, gasoline, that's fallen below now $3. $3 for the first time in years since I was there. It's fallen below $3. We're going to get it down quite a bit lower. That's going to bring prices still further down, and people are going to be able to buy their groceries again. And so important. And again, I want to just congratulate you, Brooke. What a job you've done over there with the eggs. I was in office for 1 week, and I got this one article was so bad that Donald Trump has caused a massive egg problem. And I said, this is, and they showed it. It's like, terrible. But it was during his term that it went up, right? And but they were hammering me. They thought they had us until I put you in that position. And I don't know what the hell magic wand you use. And now they don't talk about it anymore. It's terrible. Well, we'll talk. We have to talk about it, If they don't talk about it, we talk about it, right, Brooke? But what a job you've done. Now we need Congress to pass the largest tax cuts in American history, and Mike is going to get that. And I think we can finally say one big, beautiful bill, because everybody's there. I spoke with John Thune, who's doing a terrific job also, and the senators, and we want one big, beautiful bill. Just put it all in that bill, and we'll figure a way to have it passed, right? We'll figure a way. But it'll be the largest tax cuts in American history. When you add that onto the fact that if they don't pass this, you will have the largest tax increase by far, because the tax increase that I passed 5 years ago, the biggest in history, bigger than the Reagan tax cuts, what happens is that jumps back to where they used to be. So if you add that onto the other normal tax increases that the Democrats want to give, this would be the largest tax increase in history by 58% or more, I guess, but 58%. And I don't know how anybody can vote for a Democrat, but I know one thing, that I believe the Democrats are going to be forced to help vote for this bill. And then we have the very important continuation of debt. I don't call it a debt increase, because we're not looking to increase. We want to just continue that line, and we should call it, I think, from now on, Mike, we're going to call it the continuation, because that's what it is. That was thrown into our lap unnecessarily, but we have it, and it's fine that we have it. But I think we're going to get tremendous support even from Democrats, because otherwise they're voting for the biggest tax increase in history by far, by, I think, 38 points. And I don't think they're going to want to do that. So, Mike, I hear you're doing great on it. And we're going to have tremendous goodies in the bag for women, too. The women, between the fertilization and all of the other things that we're talking about, it's going to be great. We're joined today, fertilization. I'm still very proud of it. I don't care. I'll be known as the fertilization president, and that's okay. That's not bad. That's not bad. I've been called much worse. Actually, I like it, right? I like it. Thank you. We're joined today by many of the women members of the House and Senate who make up so much and make this all happen. And I especially want to recognize the leaders of the brand new Republican Women's Caucus, Senator Katie Britt. Again, Katie, thank you. Thank you, Katie. Great job you do. And Representative Kat Kamek, who just announced a new baby girl. That's good. I also want to say driving force behind the effort to create a women's history museum, with working very much with some of the women in this room. I'm not sure if it's been discussed specifically, but to create a women's museum on the National Mall. And we have a great site. I'm very good at real estate, We have a great site. And Nicole Meliatakis is here someplace. Where's Nicole? And she is really working hard on this one. This is a passion for you, and you're working. It's a big, beautiful. She said it's going to be a big, beautiful museum. Well, it has to be. If it's for women, it better be big and beautiful, or we're in trouble, right? But we're working on that. Also here, I just have this list, and they're incredible people, so I have to do it. Otherwise, I'll be run out of town. I don't have the courage not to do it. Senator Marsha Blackburn. Marsha, thank you very much. So incredible. Unbelievable talent. Senator Joni Ernst. Joni Ernst. Where's Joni? Hi, Joni. I owe you a call. I'll call you. Okay. Deb Fisher just won a great race, Nebraska. Thank you, Deb. Great race, Deb. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Oh, we love Cindy Hyde. Thank you, Cindy Hyde. She said, sir, could you do a rally for me? I said, yeah, I'll do a rally for you. I get this. Sir, could you do 2 more for me? I did. We did 3, and we blew him out, right? It was an Obama sycophant. We blew him out of the water, right, Cindy Hyde? So thank you. And Senator Ashley Moody, congratulations. Where is Ashley? Congratulations, Ashley. Also representative, and this one is tough. She's tough. Lisa McLean. She's tough and good. She's a good one. She's a real leader. Thank you. Great job, Lisa. Representative Stephanie Bice. Thank you very much. Thank you. Where's Stephanie? Thank you very much, Charlie. Sherry Biggs. Hi. Hi, Sherry. Good. Lauren Boebert. Great people. Monica De La Cruz. Monica De La Cruz. Hi, Monica. Good job. Julie Fedorchak. Fedorchak. Hi, Julie. Great. Nice to see you. A person that is more experienced than anybody, and she's still a young woman, very young, Virginia Fox. Virginia. What a good woman, right, Mike? A quiet woman, but she, underneath that quiet facade, she's a tiger. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Highly respected woman, I tell you. Thanks, Marjorie. Great woman. Diana Harshbarger. Diana Harshbarger. Where are you, Diana? Thank you. Thank you. Good job with your son, too. Thank you. Ashley Hinton. Ashley. Thank you. Thanks, Ashley. Good. Good job. Erin Houchin. Thank you, Erin. Thank you very much. Laurel Lee. Laurel, thank you. Good. Good job. Julia Letlow. Good. Nice seeing you, Julia. She's done a great job. Anna Paulina Luna. Anna. Good. Nice to see you. Another quiet one, Nancy Mace. Hi, Nancy. Great. Great job. And Nicole, I said hello to you and your museum, and you get that going, and we're going to back it 100%, unless the women here would rather not have a... Is anybody not in favor of a women's museum in this room, please? It's okay. I could see some. Maybe they want to save a couple of bucks, right? No takers. Okay. You're all set. You have it then, I guess. I sort of thought that was going to happen. Celeste Malloy. Celeste, thank you. Great job. Great job. Carol Miller, great election. Thank you, Carol. Great job, Carol. A friend of mine, a beautiful person, a beautiful family. It's like she's got children. They're all supermodels, male and female. Handsome husband. Carol, Mary, Mary Miller. Mary. How's it going? Okay, good. Mary Miller's a really spectacular person and a great congresswoman. Thank you very much. 22nd grandchild. Look at her. It's one of the most beautiful families. It really is, starting with you. It's just a beautiful family. So you have a long way to go, Kat. Come on, you have to get going. Marionette Miller Meeks. Great election you had. Great election. Great. Great job. Oh, Maria Salazar. Where is Maria? She is strong. She's a tough one, but they love her. We all love her. Thank you. Another one who's really good. I got to know her very well, along with Mike. We were having some talks, and she really knows what she's talking about. She was right, 100%. Victoria Spartz. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you very much. And Beth Van Dyne, who's fabulous. Hi, Beth. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's such a great group of people. And there's others in there. I'm going to get killed. I know. You're for me and I'm for you. That's true. Can you imagine there are others? I'm sitting and looking at others. I'm going to be in trouble. That's the problem. When you do that, you leave a couple of them out. They never speak to you again. They never. Now we need Congress to pass the largest tax cuts, and we are going to get that done. And we're joined today by so many people that are just so great. And we are going to have a little bit of a celebration after this is finished in one of the outer rooms. They have some stuff for the women. Much better. We did this for men. And, you know, it's very unexciting having a day for men. I stood up here. It was like I reduced the speech from 10 pages to about 2 paragraphs. It was boring. It was boring as hell to tell you. Throughout our history, strong, tough, visionary women have defended our flag, strengthened our communities, explored new frontiers, and expanded the American dream for all of our children and all of our people. Now, patriotic American women like those in this room are helping lead our nation into the golden age of America. And that's what we're calling it. This is the golden age of America. We want to do things that nobody thought were possible. You know, had I done it the more traditional way, which I actually did, but we won't talk about that. But had it been the, 4 + 4 as opposed to floor 4, let's see how bad they do. And then we get another 4 at numbers too big to rig, we call it. We have to go out too big to rig. They tried, but it was too big to rig. Had we done it that way, it wouldn't have been nearly as important or nearly as historic. It's much more historic. It's a much more important presidency. And frankly, because of how bad they were, we're able to do things that we could have never done if it were traditional. I don't think, Marjorie, we would have ever been able to have done the things we are doing now. You see what we're doing with the colleges, and they're all bending and saying, sir, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And they are, nobody can believe it, including law firms that have been so horrible, law firms that nobody would believe. And they're just saying, where do I sign? Where do I sign? Nobody can believe it. And there's more coming. But we really are in the golden age of America. And I think you're going to see it more and more as we go along. Together, we're beginning our country's greatest era. And we're building a future that will be stronger, safer, healthier, and happier than ever before. And you're really going to be the leaders. I think you're going to be the dominant leaders. And you have a lot of them in this room politically. But just the fact that you're here and the fact that you're with us is so important. There's nothing like strong, beautiful, wonderful women. You have the heart. You have the whole spirit. You're amazing people, and it's an honor to be with you, and we're going to work together, and we're going to make this the greatest age in the history of our country. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Pues termina esa comparecencia del presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, 9:13 hora central europea, pero Trump nos ha dejado con la miel en los labios porque ha dicho que va a hacer un anuncio en clave arancelaria, en clave de industria automotriz, pero no ha querido dar ningún tipo de detalle. ¿Qué sabemos a esta hora? Que he convocado otra rueda de prensa a las 9:30 de la noche, hora central europea, dentro de algo más de cuarto de hora. Teniendo en cuenta cómo es el timing de Donald Trump, lo normal es que esa rueda de prensa se retrase, pero ahí será donde el presidente de Estados Unidos ofrezca los detalles sobre el anuncio que se ha hecho público hoy. Aranceles a la industria automotriz que podrían ser del 25% y que podrían penalizar a las compañías que tengan, a las compañías del sector de la automoción que fabriquen fuera de Estados Unidos. Sería un arancel a las importaciones de vehículos de fuera de Estados Unidos. Nos vamos a ir enseguida a analizar esta situación con Ignacio García Valdecasas. Antes, última hora, Wall Street ha cerrado y Wall Street se desangra ante el temor a los aranceles a la industria automotriz de Donald Trump. Les contamos que los índices de renta variable de Estados Unidos han despedido la sesión con intensas caídas después de que se haya producido un desplome durante la jornada de hoy en el sector de la tecnología, con los inversores anticipando ese anuncio arancelario del presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump. El promedio industrial Dow Jones ha despedido la sesión con caídas del 0,3%. El Nasdaq 100 ha despedido la sesión con un recorte del 1,8%. S&P 500 con caídas del 1,12%. Sector automoción, Ford, moderación en la compañía, de hecho ha despedido la sesión en positivo con subidas del 0,19, 10,30 para sus títulos. Podría anticipar algún tipo de acuerdo este movimiento de Ford, y General Motors despide la sesión con caídas en este caso superiores al 3,12% en los $50,95. Ojo, porque Tesla despide la sesión con un desplome del 5,58% en los $272. Recordemos que la propia compañía de Elon Musk ya advirtió a Donald Trump de que esos aranceles a la industria automotriz podrían afectar a empresas norteamericanas. De hecho, ya se pararon una vez los aranceles. Esa es la última hora. Wall Street se desangra ante el miedo a la imposición de aranceles a la industria automotriz de Donald Trump. Analizamos esta situación con Ignacio García Valdecasas, embajador de España retirado. Ignacio, muy buenas noches y un placer recibirte.
Buenas noches y saludo a la audiencia de Negocios Televisión.
Pues Ignacio,
efectivamente.
Dime.
No, lo vengo diciendo aquí en este estudio con vosotros, pues ya básicamente desde que tomó posesión Trump en enero, y ya lo sabíamos incluso de antes, lo habíamos dicho antes, es absolutamente impredecible e impredictible. Y con lo de los aranceles, bueno, pues ha dado tantas marchas adelante que marchas atrás, que yo creo que hay que esperar a que los aranceles entren en vigor para hacerse una opinión fundada, porque eso va a tener efectos negativos hacia adentro, pero también hacia afuera. Y lo estamos viendo en la evolución de Wall Street.
Lo estamos viendo en la evolución de Wall Street, y yo refería una cosa, Ignacio, y es que evidentemente el temor a los aranceles de Trump impacta de forma evidente, en este caso de la industria automotriz, impacta de forma evidente en Europa, porque nosotros tenemos una industria automotriz que está sufriendo porque dependemos mucho de ella, sobre todo Alemania, pero también es importante destacar que dentro de Estados Unidos, dentro de la propia compañía Tesla, han advertido a Trump de que los aranceles a los vehículos pueden perjudicar dentro de la economía norteamericana.
Lógico, porque muchas de las empresas que fabrican dentro de Estados Unidos, empresas norteamericanas, también fabrican fuera de Estados Unidos, en concreto en México y Canadá, a través del área de libre comercio que se formó con los tres países. Si ahora esas empresas van a tener que pagar un arancel, van a aumentar los precios, porque aunque sean producidos fuera de Estados Unidos, son coches norteamericanos fabricados por empresas norteamericanas, y claro, Trump ahí va a tener un grupo de presión presionándole en un sentido o en otro. Por eso yo creo que es que, además, con las marchas atrás que ha dado en relación con México, en relación con Canadá, en relación con la Unión Europea, tenemos que esperar hasta ver de verdad el negro sobre blanco y ver que entra en vigor. Porque Trump, eso sí lo he dicho yo en varias ocasiones, está utilizando los aranceles como un arma arrojadiza de su política exterior. En una política exterior, no solo la política comercial, sino también la política exterior en estricto sensu, porque se coloca en una situación, es como en el negocio inmobiliario, al cual está muy acostumbrado, se coloca en una posición de superioridad y a partir de ahí intenta empezar a negociar. Unas veces le funciona y otras veces no le funciona, y eso es lo que hemos estado viendo estos meses. Parte de una posición que luego no mantiene. Yo, desde luego, hasta que no los vea entrar en vigor, no voy a poder hacer un análisis detallado de cuáles van a ser esos aranceles y de cómo van a ser sus consecuencias.
Ignacio, te quiero preguntar, tal y como estamos viendo en estos 2 primeros meses de Donald Trump en la Casa Blanca, ¿son los aranceles su herramienta más poderosa de negociación a nivel mundial?
No, yo creo que no, pero lo que tiene mucho efecto mediático y luego es muy popular, aparentemente es popular. Los norteamericanos no se dan cuenta de que son ellos, los consumidores norteamericanos, los que van a pagar ese arancel, que en el fondo es un impuesto para las arcas del Estado, y además un impuesto que él está adoptando sin la participación del Parlamento, con lo cual va en contra de la esencia de la democracia norteamericana, que hizo la revolución y luchó por la independencia bajo el lema No taxation without representation, es decir, no vamos a pagar ningunos impuestos que no hayan aprobado nuestros representantes, y como las 13 colonias no tenían representantes en Westminster, pues lucharon por la independencia. Y ahora es lo que estamos viendo, que eso yo lo analicé un día con Eva Villanueva, el paso de una república cada vez más a una república imperial, donde se está prescindiendo del Parlamento algunos efectos que hace 10, 20 o 30 años no hubiera parecido absolutamente impensable.
Aranceles a Donald Trump le van a pasar factura a nivel de credibilidad interna dentro de su propio partido y dentro de Estados Unidos.
Yo creo que para que eso ocurra tiene que pasar bastante tiempo y tiene que pegarse unos cuantos batacazos, porque su parroquia la tiene conquistada. Su parroquia la tiene conquistada y al Partido Republicano lo tiene secuestrado. Por supuesto, la mayoría de los senadores y de los representantes menos mayoría, pues no les gusta nada a Trump, ni les gustan estas maneras, ni les gusta esta política, pero tienen que callar y lo hemos visto que no ha fracasado ninguna propuesta de nombramiento de Trump en el Senado de los altos cargos de su administración, porque las consecuencias de enfrentarse con Trump pues las tendrían en una posible no reelección en las siguientes primarias del Partido Republicano. Los aranceles son bastante populares, y cuando ya ocurran algunos batacazos que tengan consecuencias directas en su electorado, pues es posible que Trump empiece a perder alguna popularidad. Pero bueno, eso lo irán marcando sobre todo los mercados, y eso en el canal Negocios Televisión lo sigue muy de cerca.
Los mercados, ¿crees que Trump tiene bien controlado cómo apretar y no apretar con esos aranceles? Porque puede ser que el anuncio que haga esta noche vuelva a ser un acuerdo con el sector de la automoción para evitarlos, como ya pasó hace unas semanas. ¡Ojo!
Claro, muy probable, porque bueno, Trump es un poco atrabiliario, pero no es tonto, y sabe que si toma alguna medida que tiene unas consecuencias inmediatas muy negativas, aunque él siempre vende la burra estupendamente, todo es magnífico, beautiful, excellent, amazing, etcétera, etcétera, pero bueno, si empieza a tener efectos concretos negativos para la población, pues ahí se verá afectada su aceptación en el seno del electorado del Partido Republicano.
Estamos a la espera de ese anuncio en clave arancelaria. ¿Cuál crees tú que va a ser el anuncio? Y ya te despido, Ignacio, que sé que te tienes que ir.
Tengo la bola de cristal ahora mismo en el taller, que es lo que digo cuando me hacen esas preguntas. Es absolutamente impredecible. Yo creo que algo va a anunciar. Porque claro, lo que no va a hacer es la Casa Blanca decir que Trump va a hacer una rueda de prensa para hablar sobre aranceles y no decir nada. Yo pensé que la rueda de prensa era esta que ha terminado, y ya estaba empezando a sorprenderme y a inquietarme de que no hablara de los aranceles. Algo va a decir, pero no sabemos qué, porque desde luego hay muchas fábricas norteamericanas, de empresas norteamericanas, que fabrican fuera de Estados Unidos y que su mercado es Estados Unidos, y que se fueron a fabricar a México, sobre todo a México, porque les interesaba como empresa. Ha tenido un efecto de deslocalización todo el proceso globalizador que ha sufrido una parte importante del electorado que ha elegido a Trump, y entre ellos el electorado de Vance, que viene de ahí, de un estado que ha sido desindustrializado, un antiguo estado muy industrializado que ha sido desindustrializado en el proceso de deslocalización, en el proceso de globalización. Algo va a decir, pero de luego yo no me atrevo a decir exactamente qué es lo que va a decir.
Ignacio García Valdecasas, embajador retirado, muchísimas gracias por atendernos y ya te dejo libre.
No, un placer, siempre a vuestra disposición, y un saludo a la audiencia de Negocios Televisión. Vamos a seguir de cerca los anuncios del presidente Trump, y los que quieran estar informados que lo sigan con Negocios Televisión.
Pues muchísimas gracias, Ignacio. Vamos con una noticia de última hora, y es que la Fed de Atlanta ha hecho una actualización que les vamos a contar justo ahora mismo. GDP de Atlanta prevé, la Fed de Atlanta prevé una contracción del menos 1,8 en el primer trimestre del PIB, sin cambios respecto a la cifra anterior. Ahí tienen ese gráfico y ahí tienen ese dato que ha sido actualizado esta misma tarde. Según la Fed de Atlanta, se prevé una contracción del menos 1,8 del PIB en el primer trimestre, sin cambio respecto al dato anterior. Nos vamos con otra entrevista. Eduardo Irastorza, profesor en OBS Business School. Eduardo, muy buenas noches y bienvenido.
Muy buenas noches.
Eduardo, no tenemos anuncio, pero tenemos expectativas. Y a Donald Trump le gusta mucho jugar con las expectativas. Ha dicho que va a hacer un gran anuncio en clave de aranceles, pero estaba comentando con Ignacio que puede ser que ese anuncio sea un nuevo acuerdo en materia arancelaria, porque yo esta tarde he contado aquí también que Donald Trump tenía intención de reunirse con los CEOs de Ford y de General Motors. Y recordemos que ya llegó a un acuerdo con Stellantis, con Ford y demás para congelar esos aranceles una primera vez.
Así es, el embajador lo ha señalado. Realmente Trump tiene dos públicos. Tiene un público cautivo que son pues todos esos estados que producían automóviles y que se quedaron en paro. Detroit era una ciudad fantasma, ¿no? Una ciudad absolutamente fantasma. Pero por otro lado, tiene otro público igualmente importante, mucho menos numeroso, que son las grandes empresas, los lobbies, el lobby del automóvil, poderosísimo. No puede ignorar sus intereses. A diferencia de Trump, esas multinacionales piensan en términos globales, multinacionales. Lo importante no es dónde, sino que se produzca, y que se produzca bien y que se venda bien. El hecho de generar aranceles, sobre todo con países que son grandes consumidores de sus vehículos, es un verdadero error. Y es un error que se paga, y se paga a medio y largo plazo. Primero, porque tarde o temprano eso repercute en los ciudadanos norteamericanos, que se encontrarán con los vehículos europeos que quieren a un precio imposible, porque Europa responderá. Europa responderá a esos aranceles con unos contraaranceles, porque Europa tiene al sector del automóvil entre sus principales industrias. Francia, Alemania, España, que es uno de los grandes exportadores de vehículos, pues se va a encontrar con esa respuesta. Ya lo estamos viendo, por ejemplo, en la venta de Tesla. 9.000 coches el año pasado, eso no es nada, es irrisorio para alguien que tiene el liderazgo, entre comillas, de los coches eléctricos. En realidad estabas pagando una marca de prestigio y casi te da vergüenza ir con uno de Tesla, de Elon Musk, ¿no? Bueno, eso lo tiene que tener muy presente. Y yo creo que el sueño de Trump es poder negociar esos aranceles para, como dice Cholo Simeone, el del Atlético, partido a partido, pues en este caso país a país. País a país. Pero si se encuentra con una Unión Europea firme y cohesionada, sus posibilidades de que triunfen son muy limitadas. Este problema se lo va a encontrar en muchos otros sectores. En la alimentación, bueno, yo no compro aceite de oliva a los españoles, pero a mí no me compran naranjas los canadienses. ¿Qué está pasando? Estás pensando de una manera provinciana, políticamente provinciana, Trump. ¿Por qué? Porque tus multinacionales son multinacionales y el mercado europeo, por ejemplo, es uno de tus grandes mercados para compañías como Ford o como todas las derivadas General Motors, ¿no? Y parece que esto no lo acaba de entender. Cree que dando trabajo a sus desempleados, que además tendrían que actualizar, porque ya los coches no se hacen igual que antes, no se hacen igual que antes, le va a restar posibilidad de vender otros productos fuera de sus fronteras. Y sobre todo, y esto lo destaco y cierro con ello esta intervención, esta pregunta, el prestigio de Estados Unidos se quedará por los suelos. Un hegemón que juega a la defensiva no es un hegemón. Un hegemón que se lanza a la conquista del mundo es completamente distinto. America First no puede significar America Only. Y esto pues debería hacérselo grabar en su gorra cada vez que sale. Creo que está haciendo un flaco servicio incluso a la industria y que va a tener una contestación fuerte. Ahora, su dinámica de inmobiliario pues es la de subo, bajo aranceles, ahora juego, ahora tal. Desgraciadamente también su política exterior se está viendo afectado por esto. Estamos viendo cambios de opinión respecto a Ucrania, incluso momentos en los que hace declaraciones como que Ucrania no es el único responsable de esa guerra. Si ya lo has dicho, ya no puedes cambiar. O sea, no digas luego que Rusia es un demonio, ¿no? Ya has hecho una aproximación. Esto no es vender casas, es vender ideas y ganar voluntades. Y creo que no lo está haciendo bien en ese sentido.
Eduardo, has dicho una cosa que me parece llamativa y demoledora a la vez. Dices que a la gente le da vergüenza ir con un Tesla por la calle. Precisamente Tesla es una compañía que alertó a Donald Trump hace varias semanas de que los impuestos a la industria automotriz iban a perjudicar a Estados Unidos.
Claro, y sobre todo en países extraordinariamente chauvinistas, como puedan ser Francia y por deriva a Alemania o Italia, ¿no? Pero sobre todo Francia, ¿no? Cuando acabó la Segunda Guerra Mundial y se impuso la estética norteamericana en todo el mundo, la manera de vestir de sus actrices, las francesas vestían de negro y con faldas. Era otro estilo. Vamos a decir que somos algo distinto. A veces se le olvida a Trump que Francia, su principal rival, su principal coco, es Estados Unidos desde siempre, desde los tiempos de Gaulle. Es decir, De Gaulle estaba más dispuesto a entenderse con Alemania que a entenderse con los americanos. Es una de las razones por las que se salió de la Alianza Atlántica en su momento, ¿no? Es una de las razones por las que desarrolló su propia fuerza nuclear. Es una de las razones por las que desarrolló su propia fuerza aérea. Y ahora está tratando de liderar esa Europa, no la Unión Europea, sino esa Europa que tiene que construir su defensa. Y llama una y otra vez Macron a los responsables de todos los países a que se reúnan donde, en su casa, en París, para decidir el futuro. Estados Unidos no se puede, no se debe permitir perder uno de los principales mercados que tiene, con la gente con más recursos económicos, pero también con más criterio. O sea, puede ser el rey del mambo entre los países subdesarrollados, que no lo vas a ser porque ya te ha comido el terreno Corea y China con sus vehículos. Es algo que no acaba de entender, ¿no? Pero desde luego aquellos que están dispuestos a pagar por un valor añadido, pues van a mirar a otro lado. Hay dos maneras de cohesionar a un país. Uno, presentarle ideales. El otro, hacerle sentir temor. Si asustas a Europa, Europa actuará a la defensiva. Y eso no es bueno para Estados Unidos. Europa tiene que ser su pie en el continente europeo, si luego se quiere entender con Rusia, igual que Europa tiene que entenderse con Rusia, pensando en el futuro, ¿vale? La amenaza china, o sea, porque la guerra comercial ya la ha perdido. El principal socio comercial en toda África es China. El principal socio comercial en toda Asia es China. El principal socio comercial en Latinoamérica, excepto 2 o 3 países, también es China. Y realmente esto ha ocurrido en menos de 15 años. ¿Qué pueden ocurrir en otros 15 años más, no?
Te quiero preguntar, también se lo he preguntado a Ignacio y te lo quiero preguntar a ti. ¿Crees que Donald Trump está midiendo bien los tiempos de su política arancelaria o crees que desde el punto de vista económico se va a arrepentir porque va a haber un perjuicio sobre su economía? También escuchaba esta tarde de otra persona que Trump está intentando provocar una pequeña recesión en Estados Unidos para obligar a la Fed a bajar los tipos.
Sí, un dólar débil le favorece porque él tiene la máquina de hacer dólares, ¿no? Y eso hace más competitivos sus productos. La paridad con el euro fue un error para su economía en su momento, ¿no? Hizo aún menos competitivos sus productos, que en muchos sectores, no lo olvidemos, en muchos sectores no son tan competitivos como los chinos o los europeos. Es que es así. Es que las manufacturas de Estados Unidos no son las top del mundo. No lo son, no en todos los sectores. Me puedes hablar de tecnología, me puedes hablar de transformación digital, de Big Data, de las grandes compañías que están sosteniendo la bolsa en estos momentos, ¿no? Que son las que aceptan y hacen suya la inteligencia artificial, las herramientas de Big Data, como señalaba antes, etcétera. Pero el resto, lo siento, pero un BMW, un Audi o un Mercedes es infinitamente más sólido y solvente que cualquiera de sus coches. De hecho, yo recuerdo cuando General Motors creó la marca Saturn y la sacó de Detroit, precisamente para que no tuviera esos vicios de construcción que tenían en Detroit. Fue una historia absolutamente nueva y distinta, porque entendían que para competir en el mercado del lujo necesitaban una marca que realmente pudiera hacer sombra a las grandes marcas alemanas. y en el segmento intermedio a las grandes marcas francesas e italianas. Y eso tampoco lo acaba de entender. Es que lo más curioso es que no lo acaba de entender. Entonces, si tenemos que mirar atrás y vemos la anterior presidencia de Trump, vemos que se puede resumir en una frase donde digo Diego. Es decir, al final se deshizo de todas esas personas que le rodeaban o se fueron. Pensemos que Elon Musk dice, mira, está muy bien todo esto que estás contando, pero es que yo no estoy vendiendo coches eléctricos. y creo que lo estás poniendo, no vamos haciendo amigos, ¿no? Y cuando aprietas el bolsillo a la gente que dirige el gobierno en la sombra en Estados Unidos, que son siempre los mismos, gane quien gane, pues realmente lo tienes muy mal.
¿Crees que Donald Trump y Elon Musk van a acabar tarifando, hablando en plata?
O sea, si yo tuviera una apuesta, diría que este es un matrimonio de conveniencia que ya le ha sacado todo el rendimiento que podía Trump en el hecho de proyectar progreso, vanguardia, en el hecho de proyectar de ayudas también en la gestión de su seguridad, en la gestión de las elecciones, en muchísimas cosas. Pensemos que ya no vemos anuncios de el Partido Republicano dice, el Partido Demócrata. No, te llega un mensaje absolutamente personalizado a través de las redes sociales. Dicen, bueno, a Eduardo parece que le gustan los libros. Pues vamos a decir que vamos a centrar en la cultura y esto y esto. Este que parece un poco más radical, le vamos a decir que vamos a echar a los inmigrantes, pero a este no. Es decir, eso es capaz de hacerlo más con sus conocimientos y todo lo que rodea. Entonces ya está amortizado. En ese sentido, electoralmente ya está amortizado, como imagen ya está amortizado, y no me extrañaría que Elon Musk pensase que su papel en la historia, porque estamos hablando de grandes egos, trasciende a los 4 años de una simple presidencia.
Pues así nos vamos a despedir a la espera de que haya anuncio arancelario. No sabemos en qué términos de Donald Trump, en clave de automóviles, en clave de la industria automotriz. Como siempre, un placer haber hablado contigo, Eduardo Irastorza, OBS Business School. Gracias.
Gracias, Alma. Buenas noches.
Y pendiente del comienzo de la rueda de prensa del presidente de Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, que va a ofrecer detalles sobre su decisión en clave arancelaria para la industria automotriz. Nos vamos a darle el relevo a Víctor Hugo Rodríguez, Negocios Televisión América. Víctor Hugo, muy buenas noches, bienvenido.
Bueno, muchas gracias. ¿Cómo están? ¿Cómo les va? Estábamos haciendo una cantidad de cosas, pero como ustedes saben, estamos trabajando desde América para traerles a todos ustedes una cantidad de información importante con respecto a lo que sucede, no solamente con lo que estamos viendo en el mercado, sino efectivamente mucho de lo que traemos con respecto al Bitcoin. Estoy observando muchísimas cosas que sucedieron el día de hoy. Quiero hacerles entender a todos ustedes, creo que estaba viendo un lugar donde no debía haber, todo lo que pudiese estar pasando en el mercado el día de hoy, que deja más de uno, como digo yo, estuvimos bastante preocupados con los que observamos el mercado el día de hoy, porque no nos esperábamos que tuviésemos esta particular oportunidad de ver una caída nuevamente. Yo no lo tenía planificado, pero creo que quienes están diciendo que hay una rotación importante de dinero saliendo de los Estados Unidos es una realidad, de que hay que vender probablemente cualquiera de los rallies que pudiésemos estar observando en el mediano plazo, pudiesen tener algún tipo de posibilidad de estar ciertos. Y quiero que rápidamente pasemos a cuáles fueron los titulares que hoy marcaron la pauta dentro de quienes estábamos observando lo que sucedía en el mercado, hasta que, como ustedes saben, ciertas noticias que tuvieron que ver con lo que Donald Trump hizo el día de hoy, pues lamentablemente movió todo y lamentablemente pues también dio paso a que la volatilidad volviera a ser de las suyas, aunque yo debo insistir de que cuando estamos observando en el momento particular de lo que vemos en el mercado, el índice que comúnmente se llama el índice del miedo, no tiene esos niveles de peligro que deberían existir, máxime cuando estamos viendo una caída, como yo le comentaba a Manuel, en algunas de las aperturas que hacemos normalmente en horas de la tarde, temprano en Madrid, cuando son las 4:38 de la tarde, hora del este de los Estados Unidos, 9:38 en Madrid, observamos fehacientemente que parecen unas caídas totalmente escalonadas y que lamentablemente, pues para los que llaman a que esto se hubiese acabado. No debería ser así, puesto que no hemos visto lo que se llama una capitulación. Con respecto a los titulares, en el New York Stock Exchange hay una cantidad de acciones que obviamente tienen posiciones cortas, y esas estadísticas salen por allí, y esas estadísticas están diciendo que efectivamente lo que es el open interest, que es básicamente cómo se mide cuánta gente está jugando la posición hacia la baja, refleja una cantidad de aspectos importantes, lo que llama la atención por el escepticismo. Indudablemente que al tener esas estadísticas bastante al día, porque recuérdense que hay algunas firmas que no reflejan todo eso y no podemos saberlo fehacientemente en tiempo real, aunque hay muchos que miden los flujos de cómo se comportan los diferentes intercambios de títulos. Eso puede ayudar no solamente a que haya mayores caídas, sino que en algunos casos, si hay una recompra, a que el mercado lo recompre. En el caso del Wall Street Journal, yo le decía esta mañana también a un grupo de inversionistas que tenemos que nos siguen y que están tratando de entender por dónde va el mercado, que el Banco de Japón, según lo que leímos en el Wall Street Journal, y está en muchos de los, digamos, periódicos allá afuera, advierte sobre la inflación en los alimentos. Hablo del Banco de Japón, y eso pudiese ayudar y obligar a endurecer la política monetaria. Y muchos me preguntan, si eso es así, ¿cómo nosotros podemos entender, Víctor, qué tiene que ver lo que sucede allí en Japón con lo que nos pasa en el día a día a nosotros? Pues básicamente lo que nosotros hemos venido observando es el hecho de que en la medida en que esas políticas suben, porque las tasas de interés se mueven hacia el alza. En cuanto al yen japonés, hay lo que se llama en inglés un unwinding, y eso que se llama el carry trade, que yo lo he venido explicando ya en varios programas, que es cómo se financian los títulos cuando han venido comprando desde hace muchos años en Occidente, digamos, endeudándose en yenes y comprando activos en Occidente porque la tasa era prácticamente cero. Empieza a cambiar porque hay que repatriar y volver dinero en la medida que esa tasa de interés variable se me empieza a mover para los créditos. Y esto no es un problema que tienen los inversionistas particulares, pero es la manera como se financian los fondos, y lamentablemente eso puede traer una nueva caída en el mercado. No la teníamos planificada, pero parecería estar sucediendo bastante rápido. Por eso les digo, la caída del 2% desde el punto de vista de lo que nosotros observamos en el mercado no fue algo fácil de digerir, máxime cuando nosotros indudablemente habíamos arrancado un poquito animados en la mañana. El Wall Street Journal dice que los Estados Unidos, y esto es bien importante, va a apoyar algunas exportaciones agrícolas de Rusia, lo que obviamente tiene algún tipo de tranquilidad con respecto a que se llegue una paz, y probablemente tiene algún tipo de oportunidad de que, a pesar de que el petróleo me pueda estar subiendo por algunos problemas geopolíticos, no sea más que proporcional. Además de que Bloomberg tiene dos aspectos fundamentales que reportar. Uno, que obviamente desde el punto de vista de las tarifas pareciera que Trump, y como lo subimos el día de hoy con respecto a los autos, no quiere muchas excepciones, y también el hecho de que indudablemente hay problemas dentro de lo que sería el Partido Republicano para ponerse de acuerdo con respecto a la brecha presupuestaria en un plan que se llama de reconciliación fiscal. Eso tiene muchos componentes desde el punto de vista de la política económica de la administración Trump, que va de la mano de la política monetaria, y también le decíamos nosotros, en este caso, a otros de los grupos de, digamos, inversores que están escuchando lo que nosotros venimos a reportar, que hay demasiada incertidumbre con respecto hacia dónde la Reserva Federal podría estar llevando las venideras tasas de interés. Hay mucho miedo de que todos los componentes de esta actividad que tenemos en virtud de lo de las aranceles lleve que esa incertidumbre cause lo que observamos en las últimas horas, un poco más de inflación, y que a raíz de causar tal cantidad de inflación en el mercado o expectativas inflacionarias, ellos no puedan bajar las tasas de interés. Eso aumenta la sensitividad en los modelos precisamente de las compañías de tecnología. Y es por eso que nosotros observamos que con cualquier estornudo, lo que más me cae es lo que tiene más volatilidad, indudablemente el índice de Nasdaq, que es el índice que comprende a las acciones tecnológicas. En el Financial Times observamos también alertas de golpe, y eso fue lo que salió esta mañana, pero obviamente le teníamos que prestar muchísima atención, porque ellos dicen que obviamente pudiesen ver inflaciones. Recuérdense que hay algo interesante que va a salir la semana que viene, y es el hecho de que las minutas de lo que se supo del Banco Central con respecto a la última reunión estaría por saberse, serán alrededor de 15 días después, y ahí vamos a observar qué se discutió ese martes 18 y miércoles 19, cuando fue la última reunión la semana pasada de la Reserva Federal, para saber realmente cómo estaban observando ellos lo que podía pasar. Otra de las cosas que a mí particularmente me llamó la atención fue una encuesta que tiene que ver con quienes manejan las finanzas en la compañía, es como se dice los Chief Financial Officer, y ellos muestran una visión pesimista del futuro económico del país. Eso obviamente tiene un arma de doble filo, pero cuando tengo una visión pesimista del futuro de lo que es el país, pues obviamente sucede todo lo contrario. Desde el punto de vista, digamos, geopolítico, hay problemas porque una cantidad de gente de muy alto calibre en los Estados Unidos está yendo a Groenlandia. Como ustedes saben, el presidente Trump se ha encargado de decir que ellos van a tratar de ver cómo negocian para tratar de hacerse con lo que sería algunas ramificaciones importantes y bases militares o el control de lo que es esa parte del mundo, porque dicen que tiene algún tipo de connotación muy, muy importante con respecto a la paz y a la defensa de los Estados Unidos. Desde el punto de vista de lo que serían los indicadores del día de hoy, una de las cosas que sucedió en la mañana y que obviamente hizo que el mercado sintiera que la economía no está totalmente en decadencia fue el hecho de que algo que se llaman los nuevos pedidos de bienes duraderos manufacturados en los Estados Unidos subieron alrededor de un 0.9% en febrero del 2025, lo que representa un aumento basado en unas expectativas que esperaban una caída que era específicamente del 1.2%, y eso desató que algunos empezaran a sentir, como por ejemplo lo decíamos con el bono a 10 años, que empezaron a vender el papel producto de que estimaban, como de hecho pasó, estábamos en el 4.33, 4.34 y terminamos en 4.35 de rendimiento a 10 años, lo que implica que han vendido ciertos manejadores de dinero el papel por el temor inflacionario. Y aquí el problema fundamental que tiene ese indicador que les traigo a colación en esta parte del programa, cuando son las 4:46 de la tarde, hora del este de los Estados Unidos, 9:46, con todo lo que tiene que ver en Madrid, 2:46 en mi querida Ciudad de México, que por cierto, el lunes vamos a estar hablando de México. Antes de que empiecen las tarifas, tenemos un invitado especial que nos va a estar hablando específicamente de lo que sucede con México, máxime cuando obviamente viene del mercado privado mexicano con uno de los fondos más grandes del país, y él de primera mano sabe cómo es el flujo de información que sucede ahí. En cuanto a esos pedidos, pues prendieron las alarmas en todo el proceso que tiene que ver con la formación de las órdenes a nivel de fábrica, y nosotros creemos que esa situación hizo que muchos trajeran a colación el hecho de que la economía no está dormida y de que a pesar de lo que muchos dicen de un menor crecimiento, pues la economía más bien sigue andando, lo que puede poner, como ustedes comprenden, en una situación difícil a la Reserva Federal con respecto a las tasas de interés. Dos compañías importantes que reportaron hoy, Dollar Tree, que por supuesto no solamente dio unos mejores resultados y mejores ganancias que lo que se esperaba, sino que pudo vender uno de sus negocios que se llama el Family Dollar a una compañía de private equity que por lo general tienden a reestructurarla y a tratar de maximizar todo lo que tiene que ver con esa compra, sino que, como también le contaba a Manuel en la mañana, todo lo que tiene que ver con Chewy, que es una compañía que se encarga específicamente de la parte de mascotas, hizo algún tipo de ventas que estuvo por encima de lo esperado, lo que refleja una demanda importante en el mundo de las mascotas. Y esto tiene que ver con el consumismo del pueblo americano, que muestra que a pesar de lo que estamos viendo y a pesar de la incertidumbre, esa compañía se atrevió a dar márgenes positivos hacia futuro, lo que permite comprender de que esa demanda está fuerte. Y vuelvo a repetírselos, aquí lo importante y lo interesante es que eso nos hace aseverar que en definitiva la posibilidad de que nosotros veamos ese recorte de tasas de interés pareciera bastante, no digamos nula, pero que ha venido bajando en términos de expectativas, porque la economía pareciera no estarse apagando totalmente, y ahora se le pone encima de esto el hecho de que el presidente Trump, como nos lo dejó saber el día de hoy, está sumamente convencido de que nosotros podríamos estar en esa etapa final donde todo el mundo va a tener que apretar ese cinturón de seguridad, porque para poder hacer negocio con los Estados Unidos hay que tratar de hacerle frente a ese proceso. De hecho, para comentarles, unos economistas que se nos han acercado, nos han explicado en algunos documentos de que no solamente las tarifas son un arma de negociación, sino que parecieran ser una oportunidad de recaudar dinero, lo que implica que algunos dicen que las tarifas llegaron para quedarse y van a formar parte de la composición de la estructura de costos de todo lo que vamos a estar importando. Ahora bien, desde el punto de vista de quienes pudiesen tener la razón, les voy a dar algunos tips que teníamos hasta hace un par de horas de lo que los optimistas están pensando y de lo que los pesimistas están pensando, que como ustedes saben, son los que están ganando la batalla en todo este proceso, dándonos a conocer que lamentablemente la volatilidad, a pesar de que no es muy alta, ha llegado para quedarse y que los cambios están siendo, así sean escalonados, están siendo bruscos. Desde el punto de vista de estos optimistas, los mercados dicen que podrían mantener su impulso, algo que por supuesto no vimos hoy miércoles 26 de marzo y que probablemente desde el punto de vista técnico, a pesar de que hay un techo que estuvimos tocando a nivel de 5.800 prácticamente, lamentablemente no pudiese existir el hecho de que lo superamos. Desde el punto de vista también técnico, recuérdense que las máquinas ven todos estos procesos. Ese promedio móvil de 200 días es una zona que estaba alrededor de los 5.750 en el Standard & Poor's 500, pero que efectivamente algunos decían que por encima de 5.703 semanalmente de algún cierre por encima de ese nivel, podríamos ver algún tipo de repunte hacia las próximas semanas. Todo esto se mueve, no hay una zona exacta y yo tendría que volver a ver los modelos que tenemos ahí atrás para saber exactamente cuál es ese nivel. Hay algo que nos tiene muy preocupados con respecto al tema, digamos, de las tarifas, porque el tema de las tarifas, y ahí es muy cómico porque en la lámina que ustedes están viendo ahí en pantalla se ve un oso, que obviamente es el que denota lo que algunos dicen que podría estar pasando, a pesar de que este tema tarifario tiene esa incertidumbre. Algunos hablan y dicen fundamentalmente que la debilidad en el sector inmobiliario y otra de las cosas podría traer algún tipo de calma. Nosotros estamos muy, digamos, en conocimiento de que quienes están ganando y quienes tienen lo que sería el sartén por el mango, por donde se agarra el sartén, son quienes están viendo que el mercado empieza a desmoronarse, que empieza a salir dinero de la bolsa americana y que empieza a irse hacia otros activos. Una de las cosas que nos llama la atención indudablemente es el hecho de que así como pierde la bolsa americana, también está perdiendo pues indudablemente el bono a 10 años, así que no habría algún miedo generalizado de que algo está pasando afuera, sino que efectivamente el dinero se está yendo tanto a Europa como a China. Otra de las cosas que dicen quienes están positivos para seguir en esa tónica es el hecho de que hay un aumento en lo que serían los inventarios de la vivienda. Fíjense ustedes, son las 4:51 de la tarde hora del este de los Estados Unidos. Durante las próximas semanas vamos a estar observando algún tipo de información que tiene que ver efectivamente con la posibilidad de tener más inventario en el tema de las casas, lo que podría ayudar fehacientemente a que se nivelen un poco los precios, aunque muchos sabemos que en un ambiente inflacionario, al ser las casas y las viviendas un activo real, los precios seguirían subiendo independientemente de cuál fuese la transacción o la demanda. Así que esto es un problema de orden nacional en los Estados Unidos y nosotros creemos que independientemente de eso, lamentablemente no hay muchas municiones para esos que están positivos, entre los cuales me encuentro yo, porque tengo que decir, es verdad, lamentablemente no hallamos de qué agarrarnos. Indiscutiblemente hay mucha data estadística que dice que a raíz de todo el sentimiento negativo pudiésemos tener un rally, pero eso no fue lo que observamos el día de hoy, mientras que los pesimistas dicen que todo esto está perdiendo fuerza, que hubo un rebote, fíjense bien, del Standard & Poor's 500 desde lo que fue el 13 de marzo, que fue el momento en el cual vimos la caída desde donde hubo el pico hace unas semanas atrás, de alrededor del 5% y que la euforia técnica pues lamentablemente se ha acabado, que más bien vamos a ver algo hacia abajo, además de que citan de que lo que pasó con el Conference Board el día de ayer con las expectativas de los consumidores y de la confianza, lamentablemente deja mucho que desear y probablemente lo que nosotros queremos hacer en todo este proceso es dejarles entender de que hay que ser sinceros, hay compañías que no están reportando buenos niveles y de que efectivamente pudiésemos estar observando en algún momento una caída mayor. Nosotros creemos desde lo que estamos examinando, y aquí no vengo con un poco la cara un poco larga como me están viendo allí, de que sí, de que los osos están ganando en el proceso y yo creo que pudiese ser interesante e importante a raíz de eso que nosotros mantuviésemos en cuenta todo lo que ellos están diciéndonos, porque sí, lamentablemente están ganando, el mercado está bastante resentido y la caída de hoy deja a muchos pensando si realmente habría que empezar a vender posiciones antes de que las magníficas 7 sigan cayendo. Quiero que sepan que vamos a dar paso a un corte de publicidad y vamos a volver con una entrevista que tenemos con Oliver Vélez, quien es uno de los, manejadores del análisis técnico en grandes niveles, trabaja mucho con los inversionistas individuales y además de eso, totalmente abocado a la parte de las criptomonedas. Adelante.
¿Qué cuento quieres hoy? ¿Te cuento uno de los míos? ¿El del farmacéutico? ¿O el de María, la abogada?
El de Ana, la arquitecta.
Vale. Eres una niña que soñaba con crear los edificios más impresionantes de la Tierra. Se pasaba el día dibujándolos. Sabía que algún día acabarían llegando a lo más alto de cada ciudad. Y que cualquier persona...
Cada profesional tiene detrás una historia increíble. Creer en ella es lo que de verdad cuenta. Arquia Banca, el banco de los profesionales.
Vuélvete máster en transformar tu carrera. Obtén tu Master in Management con doble titulación de Tulane University, Estados Unidos, y de UFM, en Madrid.
En el corazón de Madrid, descubre los Montes de Galicia, donde la tradición gallega se encuentra con la innovación culinaria. Saborea nuestros mariscos frescos, carnes jugosas y postres caseros. Todo preparado con ingredientes de la más alta calidad. Disfruta de una experiencia gastronómica única en un ambiente acogedor y elegante. Los Montes de Galicia, donde cada comida es una celebración. ¡Te esperamos!
¿Qué cuento quieres hoy? ¿Te cuento uno de los míos? ¿El del farmacéutico? ¿O el de María, la abogada?
El de Ana, la arquitecta.
Vale. Eres una niña que soñaba con crear los edificios más impresionantes de la Tierra. Se pasaba el día dibujándolos. Sabía que algún día acabarían llegando a lo más alto de cada ciudad. Y que cualquier persona...
Cada profesional tiene detrás una historia increíble. Creer en ella es lo que de verdad cuenta. Arquia Banca, el banco de los profesionales.
Recibes un mensaje alarmante de tu inquilino en el que te informa que no puede pagar el alquiler. No te preocupes, SEAC está aquí para ayudarte. Nuestro equipo te asegura que recibirás tu renta a tiempo. Con SEAC, tu renta está protegida. Recibes el ingreso en tu cuenta como siempre. Disfruta de la tranquilidad sabiendo que SEAC maneja el imprevisto por ti. Alquila tranquilo. SEAC responde.
¿Quién va a pasar un par de días con la familia? Oye, no os importa lavarme esto, ¿verdad? ¿Dónde cargo el móvil?
Vaya, ¿cómo gasta el niño?
Solo el plan ahorro automático de Iberdrola identifica automáticamente tus 2 días de mayor consumo cada semana y te aplica un 50% de descuento. Innovamos para que tú ahorres. Contrátalo ya. Iberdrola.
¡Papá!
Silver Gold Patrimonio nace en 2018 con el objetivo de innovar en el mercado de los metales preciosos de inversión, ofreciendo nuevas alternativas para que cualquier persona, familia o empresa pueda entrar en el fantástico mundo de los metales de inversión de forma sencilla y acompañada por consultores expertos en el sector. Silver Gold Patrimonio quiere avanzar contigo.
Vamos a estar con un gran amigo personal, como lo es el señor Oliver Vélez, que para que ustedes tengan una idea, tiene muchísimo tiempo, básicamente haciendo el entrenamiento a esa gente que como ustedes nos está mirando y está tratando de entender cómo funcionan los mercados. Además de que no solamente es un profesional que tiene muchísimos años de experiencia, fue presidente de una compañía que se llama Pristine.com y después todo eso ha crecido en otras áreas fundamentales, sino que también fue una de las primeras personas que me tendió una mano para llegar a Estados Unidos y se convirtió inclusive en el padrino de mi boda. Así que le doy un aplauso a mi querido amigo Oliver. How are you? How you doing? Happy to see you, happy to interview you. So I would like to straightforward ask you, what do you think about the Bitcoin? Because obviously I know you love the asset class, and thank you for joining us in the Negocios TV.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Victor. It's nice seeing you. It's been quite a while, actually, since the last time I've seen you. But thank you for having me. Listen, yeah, I actually came into Bitcoin in March of 2020 and recognized it at that particular time as a tradable asset that had, for me, a decent amount of tradable volatility. Shortly after that, and after doing some additional research on the asset, I began to realize that it was absolutely more than just a tradable asset, that this was a perfect form of money, a form of money that in reality the human race has never really truly had. This was an asset, a commodity, a currency, all wrapped in one. And it had a true, honest ledger that is immutable. And so I began to fall in love with the asset and began to view it more than just an asset, but an actual solution to the debasement of currencies that's happening all around the globe today.
Excellent. And listen, do you know that a lot of the institutional guys in Wall Street and in other areas in the world, they have been pushing for some sort of institutional vehicles where institutions can invest? And recently we got approvals in the last administration for some ETF. We see a lot of people putting money into the asset class, but the reality is that within the last few weeks, we saw a retracement, and I'm talking about the Bitcoin, from the, let's say, 100,000 plus to the 80s, sometimes even below the 70 something. What do you think about that? What do you think that's happening, knowing that the institutional guys have all the knowledge, the resources to put this asset class north of 150 or 200,000?
Well, you know, first of all, it's quite amazing that the Bitcoin of today is very different from the Bitcoin when I first got involved with it in 2020. Bitcoin today has regulatory clarity. We have spot Bitcoin ETFs. We have the first, obviously, pro-Bitcoin US president. We have institutional sponsorship, and Bitcoin is the fastest adopted technology known to mankind up until this particular point. So yes, it is true that Bitcoin has pulled back, as has all assets for the most part. And this is par for the course as far as Bitcoin is concerned. The average Bitcoin pullback during bull periods in Bitcoin actually supersedes 30%. This pullback is a little bit less than that. And what we're finding from a technical perspective is that because of institutional adoption and because of the spot Bitcoin ETFs putting in a permanent institutional bid in the Bitcoin market, that demand is actually shrinking the volatility of Bitcoin. So what we're seeing is that its normal pullbacks of 38%, 35% are actually becoming more and more rare. The average bear market decline in Bitcoin typically is around 70, 75, close to 80% during bear periods. It's our take that those days are gone forever. There will be bear periods in Bitcoin. This is not one of them, by the way. There will be future bear periods in Bitcoin, but those bear periods will be a lot shallower in our opinion. And in addition to that, they will come less frequently, and the duration of those bear periods to the downside will be a lot shorter. But this pullback is very, very normal. It falls within the historical range of Bitcoin's bull market pullbacks. And I do not believe that the top in Bitcoin is in, nor do I believe the top in general markets are in. I think that things are being, all the stars and the planets, if you were, are being aligned for a very, very powerful second half of 2025. And by the last quarter of 2025, I see Bitcoin ripping to all-time new highs, as well as as well as the equity markets as well.
Bueno, give me 1 second, Oliver. I'm going to tell them in Espanol quickly while you are trying to tell us in your exposure. Listen, Oliver nos está diciendo una parte fundamental de cómo él entró en marzo del 2020 en este proceso de entender la moneda, que no solamente era un activo que se podía utilizar para tratar de especular y hacer ganancias, sino una solución, como él percibe todo esto, para muchos de los que lamentablemente no tienen acceso a ciertas maneras de transar y de poder específicamente mover el dinero. La otra cosa que le pareció muy interesante es el hecho de que normalmente cuando se ven los gráficos y la parte técnica de la parte de maduración de un activo como este, hay una caída que probablemente en algunos casos puede ser hasta del 30% cuando tomamos el tope hasta donde se debe ubicar, y que esta caída es menor a lo que vimos anteriormente porque él siente que el activo va madurando y en el futuro pues las caídas van a ser cada vez menores, además de que se atreve a pronosticar de que probablemente esto sea por la primera parte del 2025 y que para finales del 2025 veamos el Bitcoin y otras de las monedas subiendo. And that being said, I'm going to ask Oliver in this last question for his intervention today. Oliver, where do you see the Bitcoin? We are at around $87,000 plus change. Where do you see the Bitcoin at the end of 2025?
All right. Well, okay. I'll say this. Bitcoin's last cycle had a low of $3,800. It 21x'd from that low during last cycle. Now, the low of this cycle is around 16,000. If we were to 21x if we were to equal what Bitcoin did last cycle without regulatory clarity, without spot Bitcoin ETFs, without institutional sponsorship, without FASB rule changes, which no longer make it punitive for publicly traded companies to put it in their treasuries, without nation states adopting Bitcoin, without all of that, Bitcoin 21x'd. If we assume that Bitcoin is going to do that or more this cycle because it's actually a more provable asset this cycle, then that puts us upwards close to $400,000 per Bitcoin, which is not out of the question. It would fall perfectly within Bitcoin's statistical moves during its 3-year bull run. So I'm going to say $350,000 to $400,000.
Wow, Oliver, I'm very happy you are super passionate, your optimism towards the asset class. We're very happy to have you here at Negocios TV in this launch of Negocios TV America. We're going to invite you because you know about this asset class. You work with a lot of retail traders. Not only that, you really know how to read those charts. Actually, you teach me back in the days. So I'm very, very happy to have you here, and hopefully we'll see you soon, okay?
Thank you, Victor. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Estamos nosotros en una entrevista con Matt Hogan. Él es el Chief Investment Officer de Bitwise, que es uno de los grandes, digamos, actores en el mercado de los activos digitales. Muchas cosas pasando en los activos digitales. Y no solamente eso, sino que, en definitiva, al haber una cantidad de inversionistas institucionales entrando en el sector, es algo a lo cual le tenemos que prestar atención porque probablemente durante los próximos trimestres, en la medida en que la crisis que tenemos actual, digamos, quede atrás, estos actores van a entrar. Matt, thank you for being in our platform. It's a pleasure. You don't need a letter of presentation. Everybody knows you in the field. So thank you for coming to the platform, please.
Thanks for having me, Victor, and buen día y buen negocio.
Thank you, gracias. Matt, listen, quickly. The Bitcoin have some sort of, and then when we speak about digital assets, normally we speak about the Bitcoin, but we have the Ethereum, and I also want to speak with you about the Ethereum and the XRP. But obviously, the important part is that we see after President Trump won the election on May 5th, we got some sort of ramp up to over the 100,000. And then obviously a lot of technical people from the institutional world are seeing a kind of a retracement towards potentially 70 something where they feel is the value zone to buy again the Bitcoin. If you can articulate what is your opinion, obviously you manage a lot of money for institutional clients and you have an expertise on that asset class. If you can educate us and our Latin audience and Spanish speaking audience, that would be great.
That's absolutely right. You know, you mentioned that we're seeing this sort of movement of institutional investors into the space, and it's set to accelerate. And I think that explains what's happening to the price. Right now, long-term in Bitcoin, there's a structural difference between demand and supply. The Bitcoin network only produces 160,000 Bitcoin a year, but institutions are buying hundreds of thousands every year through ETFs, through corporations, etc. The reason we ran up to $100,000 post-election was that all these institutions came into the market and bought, pushing the price up. The reason we're talking about pulling back maybe to 70,000 is that was the previous all-time high. So there's some people who are willing to sell between $70,000 and $100,000. I think the most likely scenario is that this sort of continual demand from institutions pushes us up above 100,000. I think we'll end the year around $200,000 actually, as this institutional demand comes into the market. So that's what I'm seeing from Bitwise.
Excellent. The other question that I think is important for all of our audience to understand the magnitude of the penetration of the ETF, which is a huge important vehicle for the institution to try to allocate, is in the whole overall Bitcoin space. And let's just focus on the Bitcoin again. What is the penetration of the ETF? What is the market share that the people like Bitwise, your company, and other competitors are accumulating for the overall amount of the Bitcoins out there?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the Bitcoin ETFs launched in January of last year. They were the most successful ETF launch of all time. ETFs are the primary way today that institutional investors and retail investors in the US allocate into the capital market. So they use them more than stocks. They use them more than mutual funds. They're the primary tool. We saw the ETFs launch. $37 billion of money flowed into them in the first year alone. That bought about 500,000 Bitcoin in total, brought the assets up to about 500,000. So today that's around, you know, Bitcoin ETFs own a substantial portion of the market, but not a lot of it. There's still a huge amount of money that needs to come into this space, that will come to this space via ETFs. I think we've just sort of gotten started, and there'll be multiple years of significant inflows to follow.
I like your optimism, and obviously the other question is, and I would like to understand if this is real and what do you think about it, because obviously if the reality is that the big bulge bracket firm, wealth manager, let's say the JP Morgans of the world, the Goldman Sachs, are not completely allowing their financial advisors and wealth management private bankers to pitch allocation to, let's say, Bitcoins via this vehicle, the ETF. There is a dormant demand that we think at some point, if everything goes some sort in the right direction for the crypto world, it's going to be a lot of allocations because they're probably going to go to 1 or 2%. What do you have to say about that, Matt? Which I think is important for every family, every affluent, not only American, Asian, European, but the Latino families that have the money in the big firms as well.
This is absolutely a critical point. If you think about what happened after the Bitcoin ETFs launched, it took the price of Bitcoin from 50,000 over 100,000. Even today, we're in the $80,000 range. And as you mentioned, that happens without the largest groups of wealth in the US being able to buy them. I know that sounds strange, but whether it's Morgan Stanley or Wells Fargo or UBS or Merrill Lynch, you mentioned JP Morgan, you mentioned Goldman Sachs, most, if not all of those, still restrict their advisors from using these ETFs. That's going to change this year. And once it does, there's billions of dollars of more that have to and will come into this market. You mentioned 1 or 2%. We're regularly seeing 3 to 5% here at Bitwise. So people are increasing their allocation. I think there are, years of this institutional capital to come into the market. And traditional investors, retail investors, investors listening to this program have a short-term opportunity to get ahead of those institutional investors. So that's why this is such an important market or moment in the market, because those institutions are coming. They're not all here yet, but they will be here in the near future, and that's going to be a major new source of demand.
Excellent. Listen, the other thing I want to discuss with you, and when we came from the institutional world, we have this major institution that by regulation, they have to report. For example, this next week, we have the end of the first quarter of 2025. A few days later, there is obviously release the profits and how companies that are listed have to report, but also funds, big players are required by law. I think it's something called the 13F. They need to report that. And that's where other institutions are seeing who's owning, who's selling, compared, let's say, quarter to quarter. Is that, again, something happening in the crypto world? And if you and any of your competitors are always seeing who is accumulating when they disclose that information, Matt?
That's exactly right. Yeah, you have to disclose it every quarter. So we saw, for instance, in Q4, that the percentage of assets held by institutional investors went up about 50% over Q3. So a clear sign that they were coming into the market. We learned that there were major mainstream institutions using ETFs to gain exposure to Bitcoin. There were university endowments. There were state retirement planning firms. The Sovereign Wealth Fund of Abu Dhabi bought $500 million of Bitcoin ETFs. So these 13F filings give us a window into who's buying. And I'll tell you this, every time we see a new batch of these filings, every quarter, the quality and the number of institutions is going up very fast. I expect when we see the Q1 filings, we're going to see a large number of institutional investors, most of the largest hedge funds in the world, and many of the largest financial advisors showing that they have an allocation to Bitcoin.
Listen, Matt, give me 1 second. I'm going to try to explain it in español quickly what we've been discussing. La primera cosa que hablamos con Matt es indudablemente qué piensa él luego de que algunos dicen que a niveles de 70,000 el Bitcoin obviamente podría llegar en el caso de que el mercado caiga. Él sigue diciendo que obviamente hay gente que acumuló en esos niveles y que es muy importante ver qué puede venir después de que toda esta tormenta a raíz de los aranceles esté pasando.
This is the beginning of Liberation Day in America. We're going to take back just some of the money that has been taken from us by people sitting behind this desk or another desk that's not quite as nice, but they have their choice of 7, as you know. And we're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe. And frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. And this is very modest. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. We start off with a 2.5% base, which is what we were at. And we go to 25%. And basically, as you know, and as you've been saying, not reporting as accurately as it should be reported because it's a massive story. Business is coming back to the United States so that they don't have to pay tariffs. And I think also because of November 5th, the election, they're very happy. AI is coming back to levels that nobody's ever seen before. It's a new, sort of a new business, I guess, when you think about it. But it's plants are going up all over the United States, and many of them have already been started. We're getting early electricity taken care of. We're getting permits very quickly for them. and we're going to make their life very happy. They're coming in with tens of billions of dollars. Individual plants will cost 10, 15, even 20 billion dollars. We're going to let them build electricity generating plants along with their plant, and they can't even believe it. And we're going to get them very quick permits, as I've done always. I did that in Louisiana with 2 LNG plants. I got them one permit in 1 day after waiting 14 years, and the other one in 1 week after waiting for 12 years. But this is very exciting to me. This is the automobile industry, and this will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants that were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped, and they're moving them to our country. And Indiana, the great state of Indiana, I love Indiana. Honda is building one of the biggest plants anywhere, and they've just started. They wouldn't have done it without this. In all cases, they wouldn't have done it without what we're doing. So we'll effectively be charging a 25% tariff. But if you build your car in the United States, there is no tariff. And what that means is a lot of foreign car companies, a lot of companies are going to be in great shape because they've already built their plant, but their plants are underutilized, so they'll be able to expand them inexpensively and quickly. But others will come into our country and build, and they're already looking for sites. They're looking for mostly sites. They don't want to take the old buildings that are empty and falling down. They want to build new, and there's tremendous action. There is likewise for other companies and countries, like the chip making process. Your chip bill was a disaster done by Biden. All he does is give tremendous amounts of billions of dollars to chip companies that will do nothing with the money. They're not going to use the money here. They're going to just keep it. They have plenty of money. The one thing they have is they have a lot of money. In our case, all we're doing is saying you can't come in unless you build here. And the largest chip company by far is manufacturer from Taiwan is building here, and it'll give us almost 40% of the chip market just with that. They're spending almost $200 billion in the United States to build a plant, and they've almost started. They'll be doing much of the work in Arizona. So we have a lot of exciting things, but to me, this is one of the most exciting. Now, outside of one specific day, and that's Liberation Day. That's the real Liberation Day of America, and that's going to be in April 2nd. And I look forward to it. We'll have a little news conference. We'll talk about it, but this is very exciting. So we're signing a executive order today that's going to lead to tremendous growth in the automobile industry. As you know, the electric mandate that we did allows you to buy a car now with electric or gasoline powered or hybrid. You can buy any car you want. We had it so that within a short period of time, you had to buy all electric, and the country could never provide the money necessary to build all of those power plants that you would need all over the country. As you know, in the Middle West, they built 8 power stations. That's like the size of this desk or smaller. And they ended up spending $9 billion on 8. And of the 8, 4 of them didn't work. And we're not doing that. So you can buy electric, or you can buy gasoline, or you can buy hybrid, or you can buy whatever you want to buy. And that's the way it should be. The market's going to determine that. And you're going to see prices going down, but it's going to go down specifically because they're going to buy what we're doing, incentivizing companies to, and even countries, but companies to come into America and build. And we're already setting records for new plants. I think the new plant number, the tally is just within a period of a few weeks. It's very large. I want to be accurate. It's very large. And I'd like to ask Will just to come and give some of the basics, and then I'll sign it. And it's off to the races. I think our automobile business will flourish like it's never flourished before. Yes, please, Will.
Thank you, sir. As you stated, we've prepared for your attention a proclamation imposing a 25% tariff on foreign-made cars and light trucks. This is in addition to tariffs that are already in place on those goods. In addition to, as you said, spurring increased domestic manufacture of cars and trucks, we expect that these tariffs will result in over $100 billion of new annual revenue to the United States of America in tariff revenue.
I think ultimately we could probably anywhere from $600 billion to $1 trillion will be taken in over the relatively short-term period, meaning a year from now, but starting right away. I think we'll go from 600 to $1 trillion within 2 years. And I think we'll be right from the beginning, we're going to be at a very high number, right from the beginning. And right from the beginning, you're going to have a lot of construction jobs, but you're also going to have a lot of automobile jobs. So this is very exciting, but it's also exciting because of what's happening with other aspects. We're going to be doing tariffs on pharmaceuticals in order to bring our pharmaceutical industry back. We don't make anything here in terms of drugs, medical drugs, different types of drugs that you need, medicines. It's in other countries, largely made in China, a lot of it made in Ireland. Ireland was very smart. We love Ireland. But we're going to have that. We're going to have lumber. We're going to free up some of our land. And you'll be able to meet a lot of other standards like fire cuts. If Los Angeles had fire cuts, which they didn't have, that's a gap of half a football field between areas. You wouldn't have had the fires. They would have been contained. But you have fire cuts. And by the way, you sell that wood for a lot of money, a lot of profit. It's made from that. But we're going to be doing lumber. We're freeing up our land so that we don't have to use outside sources of lumber. Energy, we're doing fantastically well at. The energy prices have been coming down rapidly as we increase supply, and we've already done that. We have Chris and Doug are doing a fantastic job in that. That's Department of Energy and Department of Interior. And they're working together hand in hand because Interior has the land and Energy has the ability to do the drilling and do what they have to do. Our coal areas are going to be opened up for clean, beautiful coal. Germany's opening up many coal plants now. They tried the wind and it didn't work. They almost went out of business. They almost went bankrupt. They tried wind, which is a disaster because it's too expensive and it doesn't look good, kills all the birds, a lot of problems. But Germany is now building a lot of coal plants. China is building one a week. Think of that. And they're using coal, which is very powerful. Coal is a very powerful energy. And we're opening up our coal mines again. And we're going to I call it beautiful, clean coal. The technology is so good now that coal can give you tremendous power at the same time. It can be very clean. But we're also obviously doing oil and gas and various other things. You can do pretty much whatever you want. We don't like the wind because we think it ruins the landscapes, the plains, ruins them. And it's got a lot of problems. It's also by far the most expensive energy. It looks horrible in the oceans. It's dangerous in the oceans in terms of navigation. And if you look at what's happening with whales, in one area, they lost 2 whales, like in 20 years, washed ashore. And this year they had 17 wash ashore. So there's something happened out there. There's something driving the whales a little bit loco, but they lost 2 in 20 years. And now they lost 17 in a short period of time. So it's something wrong out there. So this is very exciting. This is going to lead to the construction of a lot of plants, in this case, auto plants. And you're going to see numbers like you haven't seen, both in terms of employment. It takes a little while. You're going to have great construction numbers initially, and then ultimately you're going to have a lot of people making a lot of cars. And one other thing, we have the Speaker of the House with us who's doing a fantastic job. And where's Mike? And we're trying to get approved. Mike, thank you very much for being here. We're trying to get approved, if we can. If you borrow money to buy a car, you're allowed to deduct interest payments for purposes of income tax, but only if the car is made in America. So if the car is made in America, you get a loan, you can deduct the interest. That's a big saving. A lot of people in that part of the world, in terms of buying cars, a lot of them don't think in terms of deductions. People that think in terms of deductions are very wealthy people, but people are going to start understanding what a good deduction is all about. So when you get a loan to buy a car, and I think it's going to pay for itself. I don't think there's any cost. I think you're going to have so many cars built, but you're only going to get that deduction of interest if the car is made in the United States of America. So I'm going to sign this, and Mike, I hope you can get that because I think it's going to be amazing in terms of the number of cars that are going to be made because of it. And I want to thank Howard Lutnick, our fabulous commerce chairman. That's what he is. He's a chairman. He's a very successful guy, a great guy. And we have a big day, Howard, coming up next week. It's going to be good. That's Liberation Day. That's going to be on the 2nd, and that's going to be reciprocal. And I think people will be impressed. We're going to be very fair. We're going to be very nice, actually. We have not been treated nicely by other countries, but we're going to be nice. So I think people will be pleasantly surprised, but it's going to make our country very rich because we're the piggy bank that everybody steals from, and they've been doing it for many years, for decades, and we're not going to let it happen. So, but we're going to treat people very nicely. We're going to treat other countries very, very nicely, and I think it's going to have a very positive effect on everybody, including those other countries. So I'll sign this, and we will see you again on April the 2nd. In terms of this, it's going to be another round, and it's about making America great again, making it strong and prosperous again. Thank you very much.
So Mr. President, on tariffs, Mr. President, on the car tariffs, how do you assure that the car coming into the country is fully built? Could an automaker in Germany say, leave the tires off a car?
Yeah, we're going to have very strong policing, and it's pretty easy to do. If parts are made in America and a car isn't, those parts are not going to be taxed or tariffed. And we'll have very strong policing as far as that's concerned. For the most part, I think it's going to lead cars to be made in one location. You know, right now, a car would be made here, sent to Canada, sent to Mexico, sent all over the place. It's ridiculous. So this is a very simple system. And the beauty of the 25, it's one number. It's not up or down depending on the cost of the car. It's one number. And that number is going to be used to reduce debt greatly in the United States and to build things, reduce taxes. I mean, basically, I view it as reducing taxes and also reducing debt. And within a fairly short period of time, I think we're going to have a balance sheet that's going to be outstanding. Yeah.
How do you assure Americans then that this will not cause a long-term increase in prices?
Well, look, I think we're going to have a market the likes of which nobody's ever seen before, not in this country. You know, we had the best market ever in my first term. It was the strongest market ever, the best economy ever. And I think I think this blows it away. But this is something that people have wanted to do, presidents have wanted to do for a long time. A lot of them didn't understand it. It wasn't a priority for them. But foreign countries understood it very well. And they've really ripped us off at levels that nobody's seen before. But that's not going to happen.
Mr. President, is this for today or on April 2nd, the auto tariffs?
Say it?
Do these auto tariffs go into effect today or on April 2nd?
They go into effect on April 2nd. We're signing today. It goes into effect April 2nd. We start collecting on April 3rd.
Mr. President, any more sectoral tariffs that are coming in on April 2nd?
What does that mean?
Any more tariffs on any other sectors on April 2nd, for example, chips or pharmaceuticals?
Not then, but we will be putting a tariff on lumber. We, as you know, have a tariff already on steel and on aluminum of 25%, and we're taking in tremendous amounts of dollars. More importantly, our steel factories and aluminum factories are roaring. They're starting to roar. They're building new ones. I just heard from Nucor, which is a big company, a very big steel company, and they're building a massive plant for steel that they wouldn't build without this. So you're going to see things that are going to be actually amazing. And I think you already have. You know, we've had some news conferences where I can't have enough. They want to do news conferences where they announce they're going to spend $20, $30, $40 billion. But Apple, as an example, is spending $500 billion. Okay. Any other?
On the Signal chat, Senator Roger Wicker.
Hold on one second.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Reciprocal tariffs next week. Will those be immediately effective April 2nd on all countries, or will you focus on the worst offenders?
No, we're going to make it all countries, and we're going to make it very lenient. I think people are going to be very surprised. It'll be, in many cases, less than the tariff that they've been charging us for decades. So I think people are going to be very, very surprised.
Why is that?
I think they'll be pleasantly surprised. I don't know. I think we're trying to keep it somewhat conservative.
And on these auto tariffs, we saw obviously the NASDAQ 100 go down 2% at close, S&P 500 down 1%. What are you concerned
Is that
about
today?
that market reaction?
Today?
Yes, sir.
I didn't say that. I want to see the jobs. I want to see that'll all take care of itself. That could take care of itself in 1 day, 2 days, or 1 week.
Are there any conditions under which you'd remove these auto tariffs, sir, or is this permanent for the rest of your term in office?
Oh, this is permanent. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Are you on the auto tariffs? Did Elon Musk advise you at all on these auto tariffs?
No, because he may have a conflict, so we don't talk. I've never talked to him. Elon's amazing. He's never asked me for a favor in business whatsoever. I'm actually a little surprised by it. I might do it, I might not do it. I do what's right, and he'd want me to do what's right. No, he's a patriot. He has never, these are big deals we're talking about. This is probably nothing like this. And I've never had Elon come and say, would you do me a favor with the mandate or the electric mandate or anything? He's never asked me for anything.
Sir, also, what's your response to Republican lawmakers who have said today that your administration should take more accountability and not downplay what's happened with Signal that we've seen in these messages today?
Well, I don't know about downplaying. The press upplays it. I think it's all a witch hunt. That's all. I think it's a witch hunt. I wasn't involved with it. I wasn't there, but I can tell you the result is unbelievable because the Houthis are looking to do something. They want to know, how do we stop? Can we have peace? The Houthis want peace because they're getting the hell knocked out of them. It's been very, very strong. The Houthis are dying for peace. They don't want this. And they're bad. Look, they were knocking ships out of the ocean. We had in the Suez Canal, they only have about 20% of the ships going through. They have to go through a different way, which takes weeks of travel. And that really affects commerce. But the Houthis have been hit hard and they want to negotiate peace. But I don't think they're quite.
Classified was shared?
Say it?
Do you still believe nothing classified was shared?
Well, that's what I've heard. I don't know. I'm not sure. You have to ask the various people involved. I really don't know. I can only tell you this. You don't want to talk about it. The Houthis have been horrible to the world. What they've done, killed a lot of people. They knocked down a lot of ships and planes and anything else. It's not just the ships. And they have been hit. They have been hit harder than they've ever been hit. And they want us to stop so badly. And they've got to stop. They've got to say no mas. But I can only say that the attacks, it's attacks every day, every night. It's not just the one. You're talking about one. The attacks have been very successful. Even beyond our wildest expectations. We've hit them very hard, very successfully, and we're going to do it for a long time. We're going to keep it going for a long time.
Senate Republicans have said that they would formally ask the administration for an Inspector General report on the Signal issue. Will you agree to that?
It doesn't bother me. I don't know. I want to find if there's any mistake or if a Signal doesn't work. It could be that Signal is not very good. It's a company. Maybe it's not very good. I think we'd rather know about it now. There was no harm done because the attack was unbelievably successful that night. And it has been unbelievably successful every single night for the last 4 or 5 nights. So, and that's the thing that you should be talking about. This is something that should have been done by sleepy Joe Biden, but he was asleep at the wheel other than when it came to stealing money, of course. Joe Biden should have done this attack on Yemen, which is basically a certain group within Yemen, the Houthis. And this should have been done by Joe Biden, and it wasn't. And that's caused this world a lot of damage and a lot of problems.
He's responsible, but he's also overseeing the investigation to find out what went wrong. Maybe
who's responsible?
But Waltz says that he's responsible.
Well, yeah, Mike Waltz, I guess he said he claimed responsibility. I would imagine had nothing to do with anyone else. It was Mike, I guess. I don't know. I was told it was Mike. But again, the attacks were unbelievably successful, and that's ultimately what you should be talking about. I think, Mike he took responsibility for it.
His position is.
Say it?
Should Secretary Hegseth consider his position over the Signal?
Hegseth is doing a great job. He had nothing to do with this. Hegseth. How do you bring Hegseth into it? He had nothing to do. Look, it's all a witch hunt. Here we are talking about some of the greatest business deals ever made. The greatest companies in the world are moving into the United States, and you want to ask about whether or not Signal works. I don't know that Signal works. I think Signal could be defective, to be honest with you. And I think that's what we have to, because you use Signal and we use Signal and everybody uses Signal, but it could be a defective platform, and we're gonna have to find that out.
Have you been briefed about soldiers in Lithuania?
Say it?
Have you been briefed about the soldiers in Lithuania who are missing?
No, I haven't.
Have you spoken, sir, with the big three automakers about these tariffs? What was their reaction?
I have.
What was their reaction?
It depends on whether or not they have factories here. I can tell you, if they have factories here, they're thrilled. If you don't have factories here, they're going to have to get going and build them, because otherwise they have to pay tariffs. Very simple. And most of those have pretty big factories here, like General Motors has big factories here. They're going to move their parts divisions back to the United States, because some of them were made in Canada and some of them were made in Mexico and other places. They'll be moving their parts division back to the United States in factories where they may be at 60% capacity, so they don't even really have to build too much of a factory. But, generally speaking, if they have factories here, plants here, where they make their cars and equipment, but they make their cars here, they are thrilled. Same thing with the steel industry. Steel industry is now paying a 25% tariff, as you know, I put it on last week, and the business is roaring in the United States. And we can't, because of military, we can't lose the steel industry. If I didn't put the initial tariffs on steel in my first term, you wouldn't be able to have a military, because we wouldn't have every steel company would be bankrupt in the United States, and every plant would be closed. But now they're booming, and putting this tariff on, this additional tariff for steel and aluminum, it's making them thrive, and it's already happened.
Following up on the deadline for the TikTok sale, will you extend that deadline if you don't have a deal? Do you support Oracle?
Well, we will have a form of a deal. TikTok is very popular, very successful, very good. We're going to have a form of a deal, but if it's not finished, it's not a big deal. We'll just extend it. I have the right to have the deal and to extend it if I want. So we'll see whether or not we have a deal. We have a lot of interest in TikTok.
Is there a way for a U.S. company to operate it and ByteDance to still have a share of the algorithm?
Well, there are numerous ways you can buy TikTok, and we will find the one that's best for the country, for our country. I'm worried about our country more than anything else with respect to TikTok. And China is going to have to play a role in that, possibly, in the form of an approval, maybe. And I think they'll do that. Maybe I'll give them a little reduction in tariffs or something to get it done, because every point in tariff is worth more money than TikTok, if you think. Every point, tariff is a much bigger world, and TikTok is big, but every point in tariffs is worth more than TikTok. So in order to get China to do, maybe I'd give them a reduction in tariffs as an example. Sounds like something I'd do.
You think tariffs are going to be good for Tesla, sir?
Good for who?
Tesla, which makes it
well, he is a fantastic Tesla. Will tariffs be good? I think they may, it could be a net neutral, or they may be good. He has a big plant in Texas. He has a big plant in California. And anybody that has plants in the United States, it's going to be good for, in my opinion.
Mr. President, the European Union has return education control to the states. How would you handle it if a state like California were to put in place education policy?
I haven't seen a mask in so long. You're wearing a mask. So nice of you. I haven't seen anybody wearing a mask in a long time. It's good. You feel more comfortable, right? Good. That's good. So go ahead.
You said you want to return education control to the states. How would you handle it if a state like California were to put in place education policies you disagree with?
Well, I think that California is going to be tougher, because they're doing badly on everything they do. Everything they touch turns bad. So a place like California would be tougher for education. But what I would see with California is you'd have a Los Angeles department, and you'd have Riverside. You'd go to various places. And I think you'd have some great areas in California, and then you'd have some, like everything else, it doesn't work so well. But ultimately, I think it would be very successful. I think in New York, as an example, you'd go to Long Island, Westchester, you may have Nassau County, Queens County. You break it up in certain ways, so they'd have maybe 5 departments, because of the size, they'd have 5 departments instead of 1. A state like Iowa, you'd have 1. And I mean, they're just chomping at the bit to get going. So many states are chomping at the bit to get education, and it's going to happen fast, to get the education
¿Qué cuento quieres hoy? ¿Te cuento uno de los míos? ¿El del farmacéutico? ¿O el de María, la abogada?
El de Ana, la arquitecta.
Vale. Eres una niña que soñaba con crear los edificios más impresionantes de la Tierra. Se pasaba el día dibujándolos. Sabía que algún día acabarían llegando a lo más alto de cada ciudad. Y que cualquier persona...
Cada profesional tiene detrás una historia increíble. Creer en ella es lo que de verdad cuenta. Banca, el banco de los profesionales.
Dejar sin palabras a un argentino no es fácil. Pero es lo que sucede cuando descubres que, por venir al Santander, puedes disfrutar del nuevo iPhone 16 con control de cámara por 0 euros al mes. Consulta condiciones en bancosantander.es.
Dejaron mudo, ¿eh?
Santander, es el momento.
El futuro te está llamando. En menos de 15 minutos, puedes estar operando.
The Secretary of Defense has said that the information in those messages was not classified. Are you going to ask him to review whether it should have been, should flight time?
I would. You can view that two ways, frankly. There's a lot of ways to answer that question, but I'd certainly ask him to take a look at it.
So, Mr. President, when they did this, in hindsight, should they have went,
Well, there may be a problem with the platform. And if there's a problem with the platform, nobody should use it. You know, they could have a basic problem. But, you know, I say it again, you know, not that I'm looking for lethality. I wish we didn't have to do it at all, but they're shooting down our ship. And we can't allow that to happen. And again, this time ago, or one or two more.
Vice President's comments.
Well, I understand where he's coming from. Our agriculture in Europe, they don't let us do very much. They treat us very badly. One of the reasons I'm putting tariffs on is that reason. We take millions of their cars, BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz. We take millions and millions of their cars, and they have non-monetary tariffs where it's impossible for us to sell a car, almost, in Europe. And so I understand what he's saying. And same thing with NATO. When I got involved, these mostly European countries, as you know, we had 28 at the time, and only 7 were paid. And most of them were not paid. 20 some odd countries were not paid, or they were substantially less than they're supposed to be. And the United States was literally making up the difference in Europe, and it's very unfair. So I understand. I didn't know he made that statement, but if he did, I mean, I'm okay with it. It's I complain about it all the time. The European Union treats us horribly on trade, and NATO has treated now. I raised a lot of money for NATO, hundreds of billions of dollars. You were here last week when the Secretary General said, because I got them to pay money. It was unfair. The United States was paying 80, 90, 100%, okay? I think if I did to them what they did, it'd be much more lenient. You'll see on April 2nd, I'm going to be much more lenient. They were really bad with us. And then should have stepped up. They should have stepped up and done something, and they didn't do it. And hence we have 36.
Mr. President, you've criticized Jeffrey.
¿Te preocupa que tu inquilino no pague el alquiler? Sabemos que esto puede ser un desafío. Aunque los gastos son fáciles de calcular, el verdadero reto es gestionar la falta de pago por parte del inquilino. SEAC te ofrece una garantía de renta asegurada hasta que recuperes tu vivienda, pase el tiempo que pase. Relájate. SEAC se encarga de todo. Alquila tranquilo. SEAT responde.
En EE.UU trabajamos para que todo funcione a la perfección, sin obligarte a que te quedes si no quieres, conectándote a toda velocidad en casa y en el móvil. Y si las tarifas mejoran, lo hacen primero para nuestros clientes. Siente la tranquilidad de haber elegido bien. EE.UU. Respira.
¿Qué cuento quieres hoy? ¿Te cuento uno de los míos? ¿El del farmacéutico? ¿O el de María, la abogada?
El de Ana, la arquitecta.
Vale. Eres una niña que soñaba con crear los edificios más impresionantes de la Tierra. Se pasaba el día dibujando.
Decided against Apple and Google during the Digital Markets Act, and they're the first U.S. companies they targeted with that. An Apple executive told me they believe that's politically motivated because of the tariffs.
The European Union is suing a lot of our companies, like Apple, and they have 17 billion. Facebook, they're suing a lot of other companies, and they use that money just like a tariff. They go before judges that are very.
¿Qué es Bitcoin? Hoy vamos a explicarles qué es exactamente Bitcoin, explicándoles los conceptos básicos para que entiendan esta criptomoneda de la que todo el mundo lleva años hablando. Esta explicación les servirá para saber también qué son exactamente las criptomonedas y cómo funcionan, para que puedan tener una noción un poco menos técnica de cómo funciona todo esto y a lo que nos referimos con cada término. Bitcoin es una criptomoneda o moneda virtual, concretamente la primera que fue desarrollada. Es la criptomoneda que le ha marcado el camino a todas las demás que llegaron después utilizando su tecnología. Esta tecnología es la cadena de bloques o tecnología blockchain, que también se utiliza para otras cosas. La primera de las criptomonedas fue creada por Satoshi Nakamoto, que es el seudónimo que corresponde a una persona que nadie sabe exactamente quién es, aunque sí que es cierto que ha habido muchas teorías. Esta persona publicó en 2009 un artículo en el que describía un sistema de pagos P2P al que llamó Bitcoin. Al cabo de unos meses, él mismo publicó la primera versión del software que permite gestionar la red de la moneda y que además empieza a interactuar con los primeros interesados en foros. La cantidad total de bitcoins que se emiten cada año está determinada por su algoritmo y pasa lo mismo con el resto de criptomonedas. Bitcoin está desarrollado para que cada 4 años se reduzca por 2 su producción y para que solo se emitan un total de 21 millones de bitcoins. Después simplemente dejarán de crearse. Esto es una diferencia fundamental con las monedas convencionales, puesto que los bancos modifican su valor a su libre albedrío. Por lo tanto, las monedas se pueden devaluar, mientras que Bitcoin quiere ofrecer algo más de estabilidad. En definitiva, entre los usos más destacados de Bitcoin cabe mencionar los siguientes, como por ejemplo pagar utilizando estas propias criptomonedas, obtener intereses por los Bitcoins que poseas, algo similar al concepto de un depósito bancario, también obtener un préstamo utilizando como garantía tus Bitcoins, cubrir tu exposición financiera con derivados en mercados regulados y por último obtener réditos de inversión mediante la compra-venta de Bitcoins al ser un activo que teóricamente tiende a regularizarse en un escenario de demanda constante.
Estamos nosotros en una entrevista con Matt Hogan. Él es el Chief Investment Officer de Bitwise, que es uno de los grandes, digamos, actores en el mercado de los activos digitales. Muchas cosas pasando en los activos digitales. Y no solamente eso, sino que, en definitiva, al haber una cantidad de inversionistas institucionales entrando en el sector, es algo a lo cual le tenemos que prestar atención porque probablemente durante los próximos trimestres, en la medida en que la crisis que tenemos actual, digamos, quede atrás, estos actores van a entrar. Matt, thank you for being in our platform. It's a pleasure. You don't need a letter of presentation. Everybody knows you in the field. So thank you for coming to the platform, please.
Thanks for having me, Victor, and buen día y buen negocio.
Thank you, gracias. Matt, listen, quickly. the Bitcoin have some sort of, and then when we speak about digital assets, normally we speak about the Bitcoin, but we have the Ethereum, and I also want to speak with you about the Ethereum and the XRP. But obviously, the important part is that we see after President Trump won the election on May 5th, we got some sort of ramp up to over the 100,000. And then obviously a lot of technical people from the institutional world are seeing a kind of a retracement towards potentially 70 something where they feel is the value zone to buy again the Bitcoin. If you can articulate what is your opinion, obviously you manage a lot of money for institutional clients and you have an expertise on that asset class. If you can educate us and our Latin audience and Spanish speaking audience, that would be great.
That's absolutely right. You know, you mentioned that we're seeing this sort of movement of institutional investors into the space and it's set to accelerate. And I think that explains what's happening to the price. Right now, long-term in Bitcoin, there's a structural difference between demand and supply. The Bitcoin network only produces 160,000 Bitcoin a year, but institutions are buying hundreds of thousands every year through ETFs, through corporations, etc. The reason we ran up to $100,000 post-election was that all these institutions came into the market and bought, pushing the price up. The reason we're talking about pulling back maybe to 70,000 is that was the previous all-time high. So there's some people who are willing to sell between $70,000 and $100,000. I think the most likely scenario is that this sort of continual demand from institutions pushes us up above 100,000. I think we'll end the year around $200,000 actually, as this institutional demand comes into the market. So that's what I'm seeing from Bitwise.
Excellent. The other question that I think is important for all our audience to understand the magnitude of the penetration of the ETF, which is a huge important vehicle for the institution to try to allocate, is in the whole overall Bitcoin space. And let's just focus on the Bitcoin again. What is the penetration of the ETF? What is the market share that the people like Bitwise, your company, and other competitors are accumulating for the overall amount of the Bitcoins out there?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the Bitcoin ETFs launched in January of last year. They were the most successful ETF launch of all time. ETFs are the primary way today that institutional investors and retail investors in the US allocate into the capital markets. So they use them more than stocks, they use them more than mutual funds. They're the primary tool. We saw the ETFs launch. $37 billion of money flowed into them in the first year alone. That bought about 500,000 Bitcoin in total, brought the assets up to about 500,000. So today that's around, you know, Bitcoin ETFs own a substantial portion of the market, but not a lot of it. There's still a huge amount of money that needs to come into this space, that will come into this space via ETFs. I think we've just sort of gotten started, and there'll be multiple years of significant inflows to follow.
I like your optimism, and obviously the other question is, and I would like to understand if this is real and what do you think about it, because obviously if the reality is that the big bulge bracket firm, wealth manager, let's say the JP Morgans of the world, the Goldman Sachs, are not completely allowing their financial advisors and wealth management private bankers to pitch allocation to, let's say, Bitcoins via this vehicle, the ETF. There is a dormant demand that we think at some point, if everything goes some sort in the right direction for the crypto world, it's going to be a lot of allocations because they're probably going to go to 1 or 2%. What do you have to say about that, Matt? Which I think is important for every family, every affluent, not only American, Asian, European, but the Latino families that have the money in the big firms as well.
This is absolutely a critical point. If you think about what happened after the Bitcoin ETFs launched, it took the price of Bitcoin from 50,000 over 100,000. Even today, we're in the $80,000 range. And as you mentioned, that happens without the largest groups of wealth in the US being able to buy them. I know that sounds strange, but whether it's Morgan Stanley or Wells Fargo or UBS or Merrill Lynch, you mentioned JP Morgan, you mentioned Goldman Sachs, most, if not all of those, still restrict their advisors from using these ETFs. That's going to change this year, and once it does, there's billions of dollars of more that have to and will come into this market. You mentioned 1 or 2%. We're regularly seeing 3 to 5% here at Bitwise. So people are increasing their allocation. I think there are, years of this institutional capital to come into the market, and traditional investors, retail investors, investors listening to this program have a short-term opportunity to get ahead of those institutional investors. So that's why this is such an important market or moment in the market, because those institutions are coming. They're not all here yet, but they will be here in the near future, and that's going to be a major new source of demand.
Excellent. Listen, the other thing I want to discuss with you, and when we came from the institutional world, we have this major institution that by regulation, they have to report. For example, this next week, we have the end of the first quarter of 2025. A few days later, there is obviously release the profits and how companies that are listed have to report, but also funds, big players are required by law. I think it's something called the 13F. They need to report that, and that's where other institutions are seeing who's owning, who's selling, compared, let's say, quarter to quarter. Is that, again, something happening in the crypto world? And if you and any of your competitors are always seeing who's accumulating when they disclose that information, Matt?
That's exactly right. Yeah, you have to disclose it every quarter. So we saw, for instance, in Q4, that the percentage of assets held by institutional investors went up about 50% over Q3. So a clear sign that they were coming into the market. We learned that there were major mainstream institutions using ETFs to gain exposure to Bitcoin. There were university endowments. There were state retirement planning firms. The Sovereign Wealth Fund of Abu Dhabi bought $500 million of Bitcoin ETFs. So these 13F filings give us a window into who's buying. And I'll tell you this, every time we see a new batch of these filings, every quarter, the quality and the number of institutions is going up very fast. I expect when we see the Q1 filings, we're going to see a large number of institutional investors, most of the largest hedge funds in the world, and many of the largest financial advisors showing that they have an allocation to Bitcoin.
Listen, man, give me 1 second. I'm going to try to explain it in español quickly what we've been discussing. La primera cosa que hablamos con Matt es indudablemente qué piensa él luego de que algunos dicen que a niveles de 70,000 el Bitcoin obviamente podría llegar en el caso de que el mercado caiga. Él sigue diciendo que obviamente hay gente que acumuló en esos niveles y que es muy importante ver qué puede venir después de que toda esta tormenta a raíz de los aranceles esté pasando. La otra cosa interesante, indudablemente, es el hecho de una demanda represada, porque las firmas importantes no están dejando que sus asesores les digan a esos clientes, dígase las familias adineradas, que compren ningún tipo de los activos. La otra cosa que discutimos con Matt es indudablemente qué pasa con las instituciones que tienen que reportar, y él nos está diciendo que obviamente esas instituciones en el primer quarter del 2025 tienen efectivamente que empezar a decir que tienen el activo, y eso va a mover el mercado cuando eso se sepa a mediados de abril o a principios de mayo más tardar. Matt, in terms of the Ethereum and the XRP and any of the other, let's say, coins, how is the market evolving into that so we can migrate only, from only the Bitcoin to a more robust crypto asset kind of portfolios, ETF, and other instrument, please?
Yeah, absolutely. We already have Ethereum ETFs out there, so people are able to buy them from Bitwise and others. We've seen some demand for those. We expect in the second half of the year, there's a good chance that the SEC might approve ETFs for XRP, for Solana, and for some other assets. I would tell people, they ask me, how do you personally invest in the space? The way I invest, Victor, is I own them all. I'm old enough to remember the early days of the internet when there was Yahoo and Google and Ask Jeeves and all these different providers. And it was hard to tell who would win. The best bet at the time was just to buy the bulk of them and bet that the internet would win over time. I think there's an element where that's true in crypto. Look, I'm a huge Bitcoin fan. I think it's going to be enormous. I also love Ethereum and some other assets. But from an investment perspective, I like to diversify my exposure, because the thing that I'm most confident about is that crypto will be more important in the future than it is today. And if that's the bet you want to make, you want to own a variety of them. And the good news is we should get more ETFs approved later this year. And again, we already have Bitcoin and Ethereum, the two largest assets, and you can divide your portfolio between them.
I love your passion and optimism. And to finish the interview, I'm going to ask you a very basic question that probably people that are still our platform do not understand. For example, when you buy a Bitcoin by yourself with any of the exchanges, you can buy and hold. And some people think that because the Bitcoin can storage value, the best place to buy and hold. When you compare that strategy, which is extremely simple, what is the difference that an ETF will provide to the people that want to allocate their money? And there is any difference that only buying and hold forever? And it's important because it's the way you can educate more and more people to understand the ETF world. Not only that, to be able and being willing to pay the little share that every ETF management company shares to manage the portfolio and the AUM.
Yeah, the incredible thing about an ETF is that it lets individual investors invest on the same terms as the largest institutions in the world. So literally, you can buy the same ETF as Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund. You can buy the same ETF that the largest hedge funds in the world are using to access Bitcoin. I raise that because, of course, you can do it yourself through a brokerage, and we love some of those brokerages like Coinbase and Kraken and others. They do a good job. But the ETFs provide institutional custody, institutional trading, institutional audit and tax and management, all for a very low fee. It's kind of an incredible deal. Imagine standing side by side with 9 of the 10 largest hedge funds owning the same thing. You can do that with Bitcoin ETFs. It's really a wonderful gift to individual investors, and it's how I invest most of my crypto money.
Listen, very happy to have you in the Tribune. We probably want to invite you from time to time, especially to see what happened with the space, the crypto space, with the Trump administration after we weathered the uncertain times that we are living through with the tariff and all the changes, the detox diet that the Secretary is saying about the economy, that is definitely going to affect every asset class, including the most volatile Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for being our platform, and we'll speak with you soon again.
Thanks for having me.
11:06, hora central europea. Tenemos noticia de última hora, la respuesta desde la Comisión Europea a través de su presidenta Ursula von der Leyen a la imposición arancelaria de Donald Trump. Aranceles del 25% a los vehículos no fabricados en Estados Unidos. Dice Ursula von der Leyen que lamenta profundamente la decisión del presidente de Estados Unidos, de Donald Trump, y que esa imposición de tarifas, esa imposición de aranceles son impuestos que van a afectar tanto a la Unión Europea, pero también a la economía de Estados Unidos. A través de ese mensaje en X, dice Ursula von der Leyen que esos aranceles, esos impuestos, dice, van a afectar tanto a las empresas como a los consumidores. Y dice que desde la Comisión Europea, desde Bruselas, la Unión Europea seguirá buscando soluciones negociadas, protegiendo al mismo tiempo sus intereses económicos. Esa es la última hora y con ella les despedimos.
¿Sabes lo importante de tener la mejor información para la toma de decisiones? ¿Sabes? En esas reuniones privadas en las que se ve una información